Chapter 2661, Upgraded Black Dragon. Amazing. So, this is Saint's Hand's true foundation? Even after reaching this point, Black Flame still dares to fight. He sure is courageous. It's a pity that the current god's domain is no longer how it was before. Otherwise, with his combat power, it might really be possible to turn things around. How foolish. Is he just being stubborn, or does he really think things are still the same? When the various superpowers members saw Faux unsheath the abyssal blade, their reactions varied from laughing in ridicule, sighing in disappointment, and lamenting. The strength Faux had previously displayed in battle was indeed incredible. It wouldn't be an exaggeration at all to call him a monster. Unfortunately, before a true monster, Feng's strength amounted to nothing. He could only buy time at best. Had he withdrawn when he had the chance, instead of provoking Thousand Eyes' group, he wouldn't have fallen into such a predicament. As the various superpowers members were conversing, the abyssal blade in Feng's hand suddenly transformed into a cloud of dark fog that enveloped him completely, then expanded rapidly. When the cloud of fog had grown to a 60-yard radius, a dragon's roar echoed throughout the battlefield, making everyone's soul shudder. Before anyone could react to this roar, a gigantic, pitch-black claw emerged from the fog and landed right beside Iron Tooth. The ground under the claw sank as if it was water. In addition, web-like cracks appeared in the space around the claw, the phenomenon making it seem as if the surrounding space could shatter at any time, unable to withstand the power the claw carried. Shortly after the gigantic claw appeared, another dragon's roar dispersed the black fog. When the fog cleared, the figure of a 40-meter-tall black dragon came into view. Despite the black dragon just standing there quietly, everyone felt an indescribable sense of awe and fear welling up within them as they stared at the black dragon. A dragon? What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the black dragon. Dragons were creatures that all players in God's domain knew about because the existence of dragons was synonymous with destruction in God's domain. One could easily find information depicting dragons destroying kingdoms and empires overnight in any of God's domain's libraries. Now that a real dragon appeared before them, everyone was naturally astonished. When Thousand Eyes and the other Saint's Hand members saw the black dragon, their complexions paled drastically. Although they didn't know whether the black dragon before them was real or not, the pressure coming from it was no laughing matter. The black dragon's life rating was undoubtedly leaps and bounds above theirs. Archaic species? Ferocious beasts? Compared to this black dragon, the life ratings of those creatures were insignificant. You asked me how I felt before, right? How do you feel about the situation now? Faux asked calmly as he gazed down at the dumbfounded Iron Tooth standing beside his claw. After his concentration reached the Tier 4 standard, not only did he gain better control over his skills and spells, but his dragon phantom was also more realistic than before. Now, the life rating of the phantom he transformed into much more closely matched that of the real Black Dragon King. At this point, despite being a Tier 3 Black Dragon King, his basic attributes nearly rivaled those of mythic-ranked archaic species of the same level. At Feng's words, Irontooth's expression turned indescribably grim. An unprecedented fear flooded his heart. How is this possible? Didn't they say that his dragon transformation should push him only to the standard of ordinary mythic monsters? How is he so strong? Iron Tooth was confounded by the gigantic creature before him. Saint's Hand had long since heard about Feng's ability to transform into a dragon. However, whether it was in terms of size, basic attributes, or life rating, the dragon that Feng had just transformed into was on a completely different level from what was stated in Saint's Hand's intelligence report. At this moment, let alone Iron Tooth and the other Saint's Hand members, even Illusory Words was stunned by this situation. Crimson Emperor had collected a lot of information on the fight between Zero Wing and Demon City. Naturally, that information included Feng's Black Dragon form. However, compared to the Black Dragon that had attacked Demon City, the Black Dragon that now stood on the battlefield was like a completely different creature. Even though she was only looking at the Black Dragon through the magic mirror, she could still feel the aura of death and destruction it exuded. Moreover, she could also faintly sense that the space of the entire battlefield gravitated toward the black dragon. She simply couldn't believe that the black dragon was only a tier 3 dragon. While everyone was in shock over the black dragon's aura and life rating, the black dragon suddenly raised a claw. Pung! Immediately afterward, the place where Iron Tooth stood and the space around it transformed into a pitch-black void. The dozen or so Saint's Hand members who had been standing in this space were nowhere in sight. As for Iron Tooth, his 6-meter-tall figure currently lay inside a newly formed crater over 30 yards from his previous position. Cracks were also spreading across the silver armor protecting Iron Tooth's 2 arms, and his HP had decreased by more than 2 million. Silence. At this moment, it was as if time had stopped. What just happened? The fierce man from Crimson Emperor muttered, slack-jawed. As a domain realm expert with basic attributes and a physique rivaling those of grand lords of the same level, almost nothing in God's domain could escape his sight. However, he actually hadn't seen what had happened just now. Aside from a momentary black flash in the magic mirror's display and a loud boom, his senses had failed to pick up any other information. So, this is his true strength? Purple Eye, who stood a short distance away from Faux, was filled with an indescribable sense of shock when she saw the black void that had appeared near her. Compared to the various superpowers members that were spectating the fight through magic mirrors, she was able to get a much clearer sense of just how much power Feng's attack contained. Monster-level experts? Tier 4 monsters? These things were nothing in front of such overbearing power. Meanwhile, upon seeing this scene, the complexions of Thousand Eyes and the others turned deathly pale. Was Feng still human? Despite Iron Tooth currently being stronger than the Faux Saint Devourer, Feng actually suppressed Berserker to an even greater degree than when he suppressed the Faux Saint Devourer. As for Iron Tooth, who had just stood himself back up inside the distant crater, horror colored his face as he gazed up at the black dragon Feng had transformed into. So close. He was so very close. If not for him having reacted sufficiently quickly and defended himself in time against the black dragon's swipe using his weapon, the consequences would have been unimaginable. It seems your reactions are pretty fast to be able to block that attack of mine, Feng said calmly as he looked down at Iron Tooth. However, how many attacks can you afford to block? Although Feng had casually executed the earlier attack, it still carried the power of an advanced combat technique. Had Iron Tooth failed to raise his weapon in time, he definitely would have suffered tremendously. Just as Feng was about to continue attacking, however, Thousand Eyes suddenly stepped forward. Guild leader Black Flame, I admit that you are very powerful. However, you'd best not force our hand. Saint's Hand's goal is to maintain stability in God's domain, Thousand Eyes said coldly. If you really kill Iron Tooth now and break the balance, both the Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand definitely won't let Zero Wing off the hook. At that time, Silverwing Town and Zero Wing City will both face the wrath of an army of tens of millions. It was incredibly difficult for mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters to spawn. Hence, every one held great importance for both the Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand. Now that Iron Tooth had temporarily merged with the Faux Saint Devourer, killing Iron Tooth would also kill the Faux Saint Devourer. This definitely wasn't something the Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand would tolerate. Upon seeing Thousand Eyes threatening Feng, the spectating superpowers were surprised. This was the first time since Saint's Hand's establishment that such a situation occurred. Normally, the guild would just destroy all those that stood in its path. It had never bothered negotiating or making threats at all. It seems Thousand Eyes has been cornered this time. I wonder what Black Flame will do. What else can he do, aside from letting them go? Let alone Zero Wing, even if the superpowers of the several neighboring kingdoms and empires work together, they still wouldn't be able to prevent Saint's Hand and tens of millions of Faux Saint monsters from retaliating. However, while the various superpowers spectating members were discussing this matter, Feng glanced at Thousand Eyes and said in an ineffably calm voice, "So what?" After saying that, Feng used Dragon Breath on Iron Tooth and heavily injured him. The Berserker's HP fell by a sizable chunk. In his current state, Iron Tooth was utterly incapable of combat. Following which, Faux battered Iron Tooth with claw attacks, one after another, plundering large chunks of HP from the berserker without pause. Thousand Eyes' complexion went through several shades of red when he saw Faux's wanton assault. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Is he crazy? Is he really not afraid of the Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand's retaliation? Zero Wing is doomed. Zero Wing is truly doomed this time. When the various superpowers spectating members saw Iron Tooth's HP plummeting, they gaped in disbelief. They never thought that Faux would actually ignore the big picture and choose to kill Iron Tooth. In less than 6 minutes since Faux started his onslaught, Iron Tooth's HP, which was in the hundreds of millions, zeroed out, his body collapsing lifelessly to the ground. As for Thousand Eyes and the other Saint's Hand members, they merely watched the drubbing with dumbfounded expressions, none of them daring to do anything. Chapter 2662, Continent Shaken, Powerful Return. As Iron Tooth's 6-meter-tall body started disintegrating into particles of light, everyone standing in the desert woodland could not help but gasp. Despite having absorbed the Faux Saint Devourer's strength, Iron Tooth had died, just like that. Thus far, not a single power or player had managed to kill a Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint Destroyer, yet Faux had actually succeeded in killing a Faux Saint Devourer. Moreover, he had accomplished this feat while Saint's Hand was protecting the mythic-ranked monster. Meanwhile, as Iron Tooth's body disappeared, soul ripples spread from his fading corpse up to thousands of yards away. Everyone that came into contact with these soul ripples shuddered involuntarily. A short moment later, several streams of white mist escaped Iron Tooth's corpse and flew straight into Faux's body. Before he could react, the mist had merged with his soul already. Black Flame, you'll regret your actions today. Now that you've killed the Faux Saint Devourer, it has left a soul mark on you. It won't be long before the other Faux Saint monsters come to find you. They will also obliterate Silverwing town from the Orc Empire. Thousand Eyes scoffed as he looked at Faux. The higher-ups' instruction was for them to protect the Faux Saint Devourer because the birth of a Faux Saint Devourer was incredibly rare and difficult. Not even one Faux Saint Devourer might appear from tens of thousands of Faux Saint Destroyers. Meanwhile, a Faux Saint Devourer was unimaginably useful to both the Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand. However, Faux had not only disregarded Saint's Hand but even killed the Faux Saint Devourer right before everyone's eyes. He had actually snubbed Saint's Hand. This was the first time Thousand Eyes had suffered such humiliation since entering God's domain. Due to the mission's failure, Thousand Eyes wanted to make sure Faux realized just how foolish his actions were and regret them for the rest of his life. The other Saint's Hand members present also started eyeing Faux with derision. Unlike ordinary monsters, the Faux Saint monsters possessed close bonds with each other. Moreover, the tightness of this bond corresponded with the strength of a Faux Saint monster. With the Faux Saint Devourer analogous to a king among Faux Saint monsters, killing one was equivalent to becoming enemies with every Faux Saint monster out there. Unless Faux could remove the Faux Saint Devourer's soul mark, all the Faux Saint monsters within a 100,000-yard radius would be able to detect his presence and would try to kill him as long as his soul existed. In other words, they would target him until he deleted his account and started all over again. The complexions of Purple Eye and the others darkened slightly as they looked at Thousand Eyes. They never thought that killing the Faux Saint Devourer would come at such a price. Ha ha ha. Black Flame must be dumbfounded right now. If what Thousand Eyes said really is true, then Black Flame and Silverwing Town are both doomed. The various superpowers spectating members laughed along with Thousand Eyes. The power of Faux's dragon transformation was shocking and could even be called unmatched. They could tell that Zero Wing would most likely be making a strong comeback. However, Thousand Eyes' words dispelled all their worries. The current Silverwing town's defensive capability was indeed very strong. After all, it had not only a Tier 4 NPC guarding it but also the protection of a monstrous player like Faux. However, when besieged by an army of millions or possibly even tens of millions of Faux Saint monsters, even a main city-ranked NPC city would fall very quickly, let alone Silverwing Town. Just as everyone thought that Faux would reveal signs of regret or fear, however, the swordsman turned to look at Thousand Eyes in an indescribably calm gaze. You want to see me regretting? You'll have to be able to leave this place alive first to do that. After saying so, Faux stalked toward Thousand Eyes' team, each step he took setting the ground a-tremble. At this moment, it felt as if the whole world was angry. Upon seeing his approach, Thousand Eyes and the other Saint's Hand members paled drastically. Black Flame. You'd better not go too far. We are members of Saint's Hand's Trump Card Legion. If you kill us, Saint's Hand will not forgive Zero Wing. That's right. If you wish to stay alive and keep Silverwing Town standing, your only choice is to work with Saint's Hand. Otherwise, both you and Zero Wing will be devoured by those Faux Saint monsters. Faced with the 40-meter-tall black dragon and the overbearing aura it exuded, Saint's Hand's peak experts and even Thousand Eyes, a domain realm expert, were overwhelmed with unspeakable terror. Their minds blanked out, preventing them from properly controlling their bodies. They couldn't escape even though they wanted to. This scene flabbergasted the various spectating superpowers. For a moment, they doubted that the people displayed on their magic mirrors were actually the members of one of Saint's Hand's trump card legions, who normally showed no respect even to the various superpowers. Before the various superpowers spectating members could dismiss their doubts, Faux had already arrived before Thousand Eyes and slowly raised one of his massive claws. You don't need to concern yourselves with this. After Faux said so, he sent a claw smashing into Thousand Eyes' team. First sword, light shadow. In the next moment, the phantom of a gigantic dragon's claw descended from the sky, so immense and powerful that Thousand Eyes and the others couldn't dodge or defend themselves. In the blink of an eye, Thousand Eyes and the others were sent to the void, together with the ground beneath them. Silence. Destruction. Death. For a moment, time in the desert woodland seemed to freeze. Even the various superpowers members that were spectating from Silverwing Town stared at the magic mirrors before them with dumbfounded expressions, unable to believe their eyes. They got killed, just like that? Those are experts that Saint's Hand had invested a fortune in nurturing. With this, Saint's Hand definitely won't let Zero Wing off the hook. Is he really Black Flame? Unlike normal players, the experts of Saint's Hand's trump card legions had relied on special methods to gain astonishing basic attributes. Hence, the death penalties they suffered were also far greater than that of normal players. By killing Thousand Eyes' team, Faux had basically crippled half of the trump card legion they belonged to. It would be strange if Saint's Hand did not try to take revenge on Zero Wing. Despite Zero Wing's fate already hanging on the line, now that it had to go up against the Faux Saint army, Faux had actually annihilated Thousand Eyes' team, instead of trying to mend his relationship with Saint's Hand to improve Zero Wing's chances of survival. What Faux just did basically pushed Zero Wing further down the path of no return. However, even after annihilating Thousand Eyes' team, Faux remained calm like usual as if he had just killed a bunch of mobs. After giving Purple Eye some instructions, as well as gifting the weapons and equipment of Saint's Hand's members to the patrol army's members, he flew off to the distant Silverwing Town. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Shortly after Faux left the battlefield, news regarding the events in the desert woodland started spreading like wildfire. Black Flame's shocking return to Silverwing Town. Mythic ranked Faux Saint Devourer gets killed. Black Flame single-handedly annihilates one of Saint's Hand's trump card legions. These shocking pieces of information shook the entire eastern continent one after another. Chapter 2663, He's Back. Cold Spring Forest, Stone Forest City, Freedom Hotel. Inside a splendorous meeting room, several dozen Tier 3 experts exuding powerful auras were currently seated around a round table. However, despite the number of people present, the room was remarkably quiet. Careful observation of the people present would discover that quite a few of them radiated intense bloodlust and were enveloped by extremely dense darkness energy. Ordinary dark players were no match for these people in these two aspects. These people were none other than Dark Rhapsody's upper echelon and the commanders of a few of the Dark World's top adventurer teams. Aside from these experts from the Dark World, the other Tier 3 experts seated around the table also had extraordinary origins. Among them were the upper echelon of the super first-rate guild Unyielding Soul and the guild leaders of first-rate guilds, as well as the commanders and vice-commanders of top adventurer teams. Meanwhile, every one of these VIPs was looking at a woman wearing an advanced Master Forger's insignia. Despite this woman lacking a powerful aura, everyone was treating her as the chairperson of this meeting. Currently, however, this woman appeared indescribably haggard. I hope that everyone present can increase the support you provide to counter Starlink and the various superpowers harassment. Zero Wing will make sure that everyone receives proper compensation. Aside from this topic, does anybody have anything else they wish to raise? Melancholic Smile asked as she swept her gaze across the people present. Ever since Faux and Zero Wing's main force members left for the Western continent, Starlink and the various superpowers had constantly been harassing Stone Forest City. Economic suppression, material plundering, and field ambushes occurred at almost every instant. To make matters worse, as the number of Tier 3 players the various superpowers possessed increased, the area the Night Legion could protect also shrank. Moreover, aside from Faux, both vice-guild leaders of Zero Wing were also inaccessible. As a result, Melancholic Smile had to shoulder the burden of leading Zero Wing temporarily. However, with the unstable factors surrounding Stone Forest City increasing continuously, the number of players that dared operate in Stone Forest City decreased. This took a toll on the city's economy. At this point, the city's daily income wasn't even half of what the city made during its peak. Meanwhile, in order to ensure the safety of Stone Forest City, Zero Wing City, and Silverwing Town, Zero Wing had no choice but to increase the security measures implemented, which, in turn, increased the guild's daily expenditure substantially. We are facing some problems in the Dark World as well. Recently, because of the increase in the number of Tier 3 players, many of the Dark World's powers have partnered up and launched several attacks on the teleportation gate already. Currently, we are still able to stop these attacks, but I'm afraid this situation won't last for very long, Dark Rhapsody's Blue Rainbow said helplessly to Melancholic Smile. In addition, world domination is growing restless. Judging from the information we collected, we believe world domination will mount a large-scale operation soon. Hence, we hope that Zero Wing can give us more of the Freedom Hotel's resources, so that we can rope in more of the Dark World's powers and maintain a stable hold over the teleportation gate. Upon hearing Blue Rainbow's words, Liang Jing, sitting beside Melancholic Smile, frowned slightly. A large part of the reason why Stone Forest City could maintain its current income was the Freedom Hotel. In order to ensure Stone Forest City's safety, they had obtained the help of the various powers and adventurer teams in exchange for the Freedom Hotel's rooms. Thus far, they had already given out quite a few rooms. If they gave out even more, not only would Zero Wing have fewer rooms for its own use, but the Freedom Hotel's income would also decrease significantly, possibly to the point where Zero Wing's current expenditures became unsustainable. However, the Dark World's teleportation gate was also provided a considerable portion of Zero Wing's income. This was especially true for magic crystals. It was similarly something that Zero Wing could not afford to lose. I understand. I'll consider this matter and give you an answer as soon as possible, Melancholic Smile said as she massaged her temples. If there are no other problems, we'll adjourn for today. After Melancholic Smile said so, everyone present promptly left their seats. At this time, Unyielding Soul's Mu Lingsha approached Melancholic Smile. Miss Melancholic, please feel free to ask if you come across any difficulty in funding. Unyielding Soul and Zero Wing are old allies. While we might not be able to provide additional manpower, we can still allocate some funds to help Zero Wing, Mu Lingsha said quietly as she looked at Melancholic Smile, who currently wore a worried expression on her face. Thank you, Melancholic Smile said. In reality, we don't really have any problems with regard to funding. The crucial problem is the various superpowers that are targeting Stone Forest City, as well as the management of Star Moon Kingdom and the Black Dragon Empire. If the main force members were around, those superpowers would hold back somewhat instead of working with Starlink to target Zero Wing's members. Now, it is becoming increasingly difficult for Zero Wing's members to develop in Star Moon Kingdom and the Black Dragon Empire. Currently, funding was still a small problem for Zero Wing. The really urgent matter now was the guild's lack of Tier 3 experts. If not for Unyielding Soul sending quite a number of its Tier 3 experts to help maintain Stone Forest City's security during this period, Stone Forest City would have definitely ended up in an even more miserable state. Right, Vice Guild Leader Mu, is there still no news about the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Phoenix Pavilion Master? Melancholic Smile asked. Zero Wing had partnered with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Phoenix Rain on many occasions before. The two sides could be considered to be in an absolute alliance. Melancholic Smile and Phoenix Rain were also fairly close friends, as the two of them had come into frequent contact with each other because of the business relationship between their two guilds. Originally, after the various superpowers started targeting Stone Forest City, Melancholic Smile had sought Phoenix Rain's help to solve some of the problems Zero Wing encountered in the Black Dragon Empire. However, no matter how she tried contacting Phoenix Rain, she couldn't get through at all. It was as if Phoenix Rain had disappeared from God's domain. In fact, even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members did not know Phoenix Rain's whereabouts. We have already sent a lot of people to investigate this matter. It is truly strange. Let alone Phoenix Rain and her trusted subordinates, even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Ku Roan, 9 Dragons Emperor, and many others of the guild's upper echelon have disappeared. Currently, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is relying entirely on its Grand Elders to operate. According to the information we got, even those Grand Elders don't know what is going on, Mu Lingsha said. Disappeared? Melancholic Smile was stunned when she heard Mu Lingsha's words. The core upper echelon of a super first-rate guild had actually disappeared overnight without any news. Who would possibly dare believe this? However, I also heard that Mythology invited the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion to the Faux Saint Alliance discussion that it is holding in the Fire Dragon Empire. Once this alliance discussion ends, we might receive some news regarding the Phoenix Pavilion Master, Mu Lingsha said. Alliance discussion? Melancholic Smile's complexion turned even more haggard when she heard this phrase. It seems we are really in trouble this time. Ostensibly, Mythology's alliance discussion would focus on the problem of the Faux Saint monsters. In reality, Mythology was simply trying to rope in the various superpowers to capture Stone Forest City. If the various superpowers come to an agreement on how to split Stone Forest City's profits during this upcoming discussion, then the next step would be for them to attack Stone Forest City. With Stone Forest City's current defenses, it could fend off the various superpowers' joint assault, but such a war would destroy Stone Forest City's economy. Melancholic Smile wasn't the only person suffering a headache over this matter. Mu Lingsha was not having a good time either. After all, Mythology's alliance discussion this time wouldn't target just Zero Wing but also Unyielding Soul. Unyielding Soul was falling into an increasingly precarious situation, yet she couldn't do anything about it. This was because 15 superpowers were attending the alliance discussion this time, 3 of which were super guilds, making it undoubtedly the grandest meeting ever held on the eastern continent. If all of these superpowers worked together, the strength they could unleash would be unimaginable. Just as Melancholic Smile and Mu Lingsha were feeling helpless, Liang Jing, who was at one side, reading a message, suddenly revealed a rare smile. No. It's not us who are in trouble, but them. Liang Jing exclaimed excitedly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what happened? Both Melancholic Smile and Mu Lingsha were confused by Liang Jing's sudden about-face. They could not understand why she was smiling at all. He's back. He? The guild leader. The guild leader is back. Chapter 2664. Zero Wing in an uproar. Everyone's plans. Both Melancholic Smile and Mu Lingsha were stunned upon hearing Liang Jing's words. You managed to contact the guild leader? Melancholic Smile asked excitedly. The current Zero Wing was in an extremely tight spot, as all of the guild's top combatants were absent. However, this still wasn't the most important point. The crucial thing was that morale in the guild had fallen to an unprecedented low. Faux had always been Zero Wing's backbone. His return might not be able to drag Zero Wing out of its current predicament, but it would be able to unite the hearts of Zero Wing's members. Moreover, his return would also strengthen the confidence of Zero Wing's various partners. After all, the main reason why these powers had partnered with Zero Wing in the first place was Faux. At this moment, let alone melancholic smile, even Mu Lingsha gazed at Liang Jing eagerly, wanting to know if Faux had truly returned or not. If Faux had truly returned to the Eastern continent, the various superpowers would naturally have to reconsider their decision to join hands with Starlink and target Zero Wing. Even if their alliance remained standing, they wouldn't be as united as before. Not yet, Liang Jing said, shaking her head. I only received a report that the guild leader is currently in Silverwing town. After saying so, Liang Jing forwarded the report to Melancholic Smile for her inspection. However, when Melancholic Smile and Mu Lingsha finished reading the report Liang Jing shared with them, the excitement on their faces disappeared, replaced by indescribable grimness. How could this be? Melancholic Smile could not help growing anxious after reading the report. Quick! Gather the elite personal guards and contact Hell Rush's team. We need to head to Silverwing town as soon as possible. The fact that Faux killed a mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer was indeed astonishing. Such exciting news would definitely heighten morale. However, the retaliation of millions of Faux Saint monsters was no laughing matter. Not to mention, Saint's Hand wouldn't sit still and do nothing after suffering humiliation. At that time, Silverwing town would have to go up against several million Faux Saint monsters, as well as Saint's Hand's experts. With Silverwing town's defenses, stopping such a force would be utterly impossible. Meanwhile, if Faux were to end up getting devoured by those Faux Saint monsters, the consequences for Zero Wing would be unimaginable. Let's not panic first. Those Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand won't take action so soon. They will need some time to amass their forces. I'll contact Unyielding Heart and have him lead a team over to Silverwing town immediately, Mu Lingsha said, pacifying Melancholic Smile. Thank you, Melancholic Smile said as she nodded in gratitude. She then took a deep breath to calm herself before methodically arranging for the necessary manpower to send to Silverwing town. Meanwhile, as Melancholic Smile and the others were leading an army to Silverwing town, the various superpowers were reeling from the news of Feng's return. They never thought that Feng would reappear after disappearing for such a long time. Or to put it in another way, the Sword King of old had returned. Moreover, Feng's individual combat power had even reached unbelievable heights. His dragon transformation actually allowed him to effortlessly kill a mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer. The Sword King was far more frightening than before. This astonishing transformation would also make Zero Wing even more difficult to deal with. After all, compared to a guild with weak morale and divided opinions, a united guild with strong morale would be capable of exhibiting much greater combat power. Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon City, Scorching Flame Restaurant. The Scorching Flame Restaurant towered over 30 stories above the city center. At this moment, a female level 116 Guardian Knight clad in black gold armor entered the top floor room of the restaurant. The Guardian Knight radiated a frightening aura that suppressed even the ambient mana around her. However, when this Guardian Knight arrived before the woman currently dining inside the room, she gave a very respectful bow. Vice Guild Leader Shadow, Black Flame has returned to the Eastern Continent, White Feather reported as she placed a document before Cold Shadow. She then continued, like we guessed, he has become much stronger than before. As a result, Zero Wing and its partners have regained their confidence. Even the Secret Pavilion has dispatched more manpower to help defend Stone Forest City. Currently, the various superpowers are hotly discussing this matter. Should we still proceed with our original plan and hold the alliance discussion? Of course. He merely killed one Faux Saint Devourer. The big picture remains the same. Proceed according to plan, Cold Shadow said, a seductive smile appearing on her face. Those superpowers are no fools either. They should understand that times have changed. If they wish to survive in the new era, their only option is to plunder more resources for themselves. Not to mention, both Black Flame and Silverwing Town won't survive much longer. Although Shifeng's return had indeed shocked the various superpowers, that was it. After all, one would have trouble adapting to the changes in the rapidly developing eastern continent, even if one left the continent for just 2 or 3 days. Shifeng had disappeared from the eastern continent for around 2 weeks. Moreover, there was also the activation of the Demon God's Chaos Expansion Pack, as well as the outbreak of the Faux Saint monsters. The current eastern continent was not the eastern continent of 2 weeks ago. One could say that Shifeng's time had already passed. The threat he posed to the various superpowers was no longer as great as before. In the current God's domain, Tier 3 experts were no longer as rare as before. Even the various top adventurer teams boasted over 100 Tier 3 experts under their command, let alone the various first-rate guilds and superpowers. Hence, it was now incredibly difficult for powerful individuals like Shifeng to accomplish great feats on their own. Tier 3 personal guards were also no longer as great of a threat to players as they were before. Understood. I'll notify the various superpowers, then. White Feather nodded before leaving the Scorching Flame restaurant. While the eastern continent's various superpowers were discussing Shifeng's return, Shifeng himself had gone to Zero Wing's residence in Silverwing Town to rest. Guild leader, as per your instructions, we have started secretly transferring the crippled NPCs and elite Tier 3 personal guards. It shouldn't be long before they arrive in town. We have also tasked people to monitor the gaming cabins of the Vice Guild leaders and the others. As soon as they leave that special space, we will know about it, Yulan reported to Shifeng, who was currently browsing the latest news regarding the eastern continent. All right. They should be able to get out of that place in a few more days. If they arrive inside the Faux Saint monster's territory, send a rescue team immediately, Shifeng said, nodding. Although he doubted that Zero Wing's main force members would have any problems dealing with the Faux Saint monsters, if they got surrounded by a large number of Faux Saint destroyers or encountered a Faux Saint devourer, they might still get killed. Meanwhile, the enhanced death penalty from dying to a Faux Saint monster was something he didn't want Zero Wing's main force members to suffer. Guild leader, are you really fine in your present condition? Yulan asked worriedly. Not only did Shifeng lose contact with the outside world for such a long period, but he had even spent all this time lying inside his virtual gaming cabin, completely reliant on the cabin's nutrient solution to sustain himself. His physical body couldn't be unaffected. Not to mention, he had just experienced such an intense battle and had a soul mark placed on him. Who knew if that soul mark would have any side effects or not? If Shifeng were to collapse from overwork now and suffered lasting damage to his body, it would be putting the cart before the horse. Relax. I'm really fine, Shifeng said, chuckling. In fact, my mind is in exceptionally good condition right now. New ideas are popping up in my mind from time to time, and they're making me eager to start training. It's good that you're fine. However, if you feel sick, you must log off and rest immediately. You can leave the other matters to us, Yulan said. After seeing that Shifeng was indeed in good spirits, she stopped trying to persuade him to rest and left the office to handle the other tasks he had given her. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, after Yulan left, Shifeng stopped browsing the eastern continent's news. He then focused on the several strands of mist the Faux Saint Devourer had sent into his body. This wasn't his first time receiving a soul mark. Normally, players couldn't sense the soul mark that plagued them. However, he could actually clearly sense it inside his mind. He could even sense the white mist circling his brain. This situation intrigued him. Following which, Shifeng focused all his attention on the several strands of mist meandering through his mind. His expression suddenly changed. No, that's not right. This isn't a soul mark but a soul array. Chapter 2665, Magic Array that upgrades the soul. Looking at the strands of white mist hovering around in his mind, coupled with the countless sparkles of light around the mist, Faux could not help being surprised. In God's domain, magic arrays were generally made out of mana. However, some magic arrays were not made up of just mana but had other things mixed in as well. Meanwhile, the magic array he was looking at had traces of soul. I never thought that the rumored soul array actually existed. Faux revealed an ecstatic look on his face as he observed the white mist circulating in his brain. He had only ever heard of soul arrays. He had never actually seen one before. According to the rumors he had heard, the soul array was a magic array capable of changing a player's soul. Of course, there were also mentions that the soul array devoured a player's soul. In short, there were many rumors surrounding soul arrays. However, there was one thing Faux was certain of: a soul array could upgrade a player's soul. Logically, it shouldn't be possible for players to upgrade their soul, that was only possible for NPCs. However, the soul array made the impossible possible. And according to the several testaments Faux heard in his previous life, once a player had their soul upgraded, even an ordinary expert would become a powerhouse in God's domain. In fact, some experts had even managed to reach Tier 5 thanks to the upgrade. Nevertheless, most people that heard these rumors and testaments about the soul array's existence and functions had dismissed them as tall tales. They felt that even without the soul array, the experts that had given their testaments about the soul array would still have become powerhouses in God's domain. Hence, most players in God's domain had treated the existence of soul arrays as a joke. Now, however, Faux was actually looking at a soul array himself. Of course, unless one was an advanced magician, one would most likely have a difficult time recognizing these strands of mist as a magic array. Most people would treat it as a soul mark. Thankfully, I checked it in time. Had I waited a few more days, I might have lost this opportunity. Faux sighed in relief when he saw the strands of silver mist gradually thinning out. The soul array within him was being powered by the Faux Saint Devourer's soul energy and mana. While replenishing the soul array's mana was an easy task, replenishing the soul energy was not. At least, Faux had no idea how he could do so. Hence, the soul array would not last for very long. Of course, so long as this soul array existed, the Faux Saint monsters would be able to perceive his presence. The soul array's existence could be considered both good fortune and misfortune. Having thought up to this point, Faux promptly started studying the soul array in his brain. The soul array had merely been imprinted onto his brain. The magic array itself wasn't active. If he wished to let the soul array exhibit its real effects, he would have to activate it first. Sure enough, this soul array really is complex. Just from what I can see, it is made up of at least 40 basic master magic arrays and over a dozen advanced master magic arrays, 3 of which are almost at the Grandmaster standard. Moreover, I have to rely on my own spiritual will to activate this soul array, and even the slightest mistake will result in my soul getting devoured. It's no wonder some people labeled it a magic array that devours players' souls. After inspecting the soul array for half an hour, Faux was flabbergasted by his findings. The soul was something illusory. There was no describing it with words, much less upgrading it, or weakening it. However, the soul array within him could actually accomplish this feat easily. This was simply unbelievable. Unfortunately, the risks involved in activating the soul array were ridiculous. Of the 2 possible outcomes, one was heaven, while the other was hell. There was nothing in between. If ordinary experts were presented with such a choice, they probably would not hesitate to give activating the soul array a try. After all, the potential gains far outstripped the potential losses. Even if they got their souls damaged, the worst outcome would be remaining stuck at Tier 3 forever. For ordinary experts, this would most likely be the case anyway, even if they didn't have their souls weakened. However, it was a completely different story for Faux. His potential losses outweighed his potential gains. With his current standards, he should have no problem reaching Tier 5. If he had his soul damaged now, then reaching Tier 5 would become a problem. After all, the higher the tier players reached, the lower the importance of weapons, equipment, and bloodlines. Instead, individual strength was what mattered most. Do I give up? Faux hesitated despite himself as he considered the gradually dissipating soul array in his mind. As the soul array would be used on his soul, he only had one chance at activating it. If he messed up the activation, the soul array would backfire and devour his soul instead. However, if he succeeded, then the soul array would upgrade his soul. No, it's not hopeless. After debating for some time, Faux thought of a possibility. He then took out Augustus's damaged heart from his bag. It was incredibly rare for players to come across opportunities to upgrade their souls. So long as he successfully activated the soul array, he would have a much easier time challenging not only a Tier 4 promotion quest of greater difficulty but also future promotions. In fact, the help he could gain from an upgraded soul would be much greater than what he could gain from a piece of legendary equipment. It would be a huge waste to discard this opportunity. Meanwhile, there were two ways he could drastically increase his chances of successfully activating the soul array. The first method was to familiarize himself with the magic arrays used to make the entire soul array. However, the soul array was extremely complex. At his current standards, he might need 2 whole weeks to learn and memorize all the magic arrays. The second method was to improve his mental state so that he could guide his spiritual will through the soul array with greater precision. For others, both of these methods would be incredibly difficult. However, that was not the case for Faux. Augustus's damaged heart was capable of releasing eternal energy when activated. Eternal energy was many times superior to mana. It could elevate a player's mental state to its very peak. Be it familiarizing himself with the soul array or guiding his spiritual will through the soul array, eternal energy would be of great help. With eternal energy, his chances of successfully activating the soul array would increase considerably. The only problem was that Augustus's damaged heart had a 3-month cooldown. Of course, there was also the option of using one god crystal to circumvent the cooldown. While this was incredibly expensive, spending one god crystal to upgrade his soul would be well worth it. Following which, Faux took out the last god crystal he had and placed it inside Augustus's damaged heart. He then activated the heart's magic array. Immediately, streams of purple mist flowed out of Augustus's heart and converged around Faux. At the same time, a refreshing feeling spread across his body. His thoughts also became much clearer than before. Good. Let's begin. Taking a deep breath, Faux started carefully analyzing the soul array's components one after another. 2 hours. 4 hours. 6 hours. Originally, it should have taken Faux at least a dozen days to learn the soul array. However, with the help of eternal energy, he learned and familiarized himself with all of the soul array's components in just a little over 7 hours. He had even achieved rough mastery of a pseudo-grandmaster magic array that could be used to exert a little control over souls. Now that I've familiarized myself with all of the magic arrays, next up will be to utilize my spiritual will to activate them. Looking at the soul array in his mind, he could not help some slight nervousness. Although he had familiarized himself with all of the component arrays, activating them was an entirely different matter. After all, the activation of each magic array required him to split his spiritual will into multiple strands. The difficulty of doing so was incredibly high. After mentally preparing himself for several minutes, Faux then started guiding his spiritual will through the magic arrays in his mind. 1 magic array activated. 2 magic arrays activated. 3 magic arrays activated. With each subsequent magic array Faux activated, the difficulty increased. Initially, he needed to split his spiritual will only into 3 strands. By the 4th magic array, that number increased to 6. Fortunately, for an expert like Faux, such a task was not particularly difficult. Hence, the activation of the magic arrays proceeded in an orderly manner. Time passed quickly. Before Faux realized it, more than 20 minutes had gone by already. At this point, the sweat from his forehead had already drenched the light armor he wore. the last one. The final magic array actually required Faux to split his spiritual will into 17 strands. This final magic array was also the one he was most familiar with. Pung. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Suddenly, a crisp sound echoed in his mind. In the next moment, the soul array's core magic array shattered, followed by the shattering of the other component arrays in a domino effect. Meanwhile, the several strands of white mist circulating in Feng's mind transformed into countless particles of light that merged into his brain. Is it done? Feng was stunned when he saw this scene inside his mind. Chapter 2666, Soul Upgraded, Natural Domain. Zero Wing's residence, Guild Leader's office. Sitting quietly on his chair, Feng suddenly opened his eyes, his mind roiling with confusion. Just a second ago, he clearly sensed that he had successfully activated the core magic array. In the next second, however, the soul array had shattered so thoroughly that no traces remained whatsoever. It was as if the soul array had never existed in his mind. What is going on here? Did I succeed or fail? After confirming the absence of the soul array, Feng tried moving his body a little. However, he did not detect any changes or discomfort in his body. It was as if everything that had happened was an illusion. From what he understood of the soul array, so long as players successfully activated it, their souls would receive an upgrade, and their game character's natural talent would receive a significant improvement. On the other hand, if players failed to activate the soul array, their souls would get devoured, and their natural talent would deteriorate significantly, which would, in turn, eliminate almost all chances for further improvement. However, he currently didn't feel any different from before he tried activating the soul array. Both his physical body and mental state felt normal, neither more active nor sluggish. Could this soul array be a sham? After pondering for some time, Feng could come up with only this conclusion. Instead of the real deal, the soul array planted in his mind was merely a somewhat special soul mark. No other explanation made sense. Of course, there was one other possibility: all the information he obtained regarding the soul array in the past was false. The soul array did not possess the ability to alter a player's soul at all, and everyone who supposedly experienced these effects had only been imagining things. At this point, Feng could not help but sigh. If that really was the case, then he had suffered a huge loss this time. He had spent one god crystal to reset the cooldown on Augustus's damaged heart. Previously, in order to help out the guild's core members, he had spent most of the god crystals he had on hand and kept only one for himself, just in case. Now, he had wasted his last god crystal. Just as a wave of depression washed over Feng, Yulan knocked on his door and entered the room. Guild leader, Melancholic and the others have arrived. In addition, the 300+ disabled NPCs are already in the residence's plaza. We can start the ceremony at any time, Yulan said, finding the look of depression on Feng's face a little strange. All right. Have the NPCs wait on the second underground floor first. Have Melancholic make the necessary preparations as well. I still need some time to myself, Feng said, nodding. I'll inform them, then, Yulan said before leaving the office. After she left, Feng took out the memory crystal the Crimson-Eyed Sword Saint had given him. Since Augustus's heart was still pumping out eternal energy, he planned to use this opportunity to learn Elvo's legacy. In God's domain, God crystals were rarer than even epic weapons and equipment. Coming across one was highly dependent on luck. Now that he had wasted a god crystal to activate Augustus's heart, he naturally couldn't let even a second of its duration go to waste. Otherwise, he would have to wait 3 months or obtain another god crystal to activate it again. The instant Feng tried to inject his mana into the memory crystal, a white mist actually formed around the crystal, stunning him. This materialized mana? How is this possible? Mana was intangible. Players could only rely on their senses and imagination to control it. Even then, they could exert only simple control over mana. Trying to concentrate the density of thin mana was beyond even Tier 4 players who had basic control over mana. Normally, players would be capable of such a feat only after reaching the Advanced Master Magician standard. Faux had just recently reached the Intermediate Master Magician standard, yet this materialized mana indicated that he had actually reached the Advanced Master Magician standard already. He could hardly believe it. An Advanced Master Magician. Although the Magician class was only a subclass in God's domain, the Advanced Master Magician standard was a realm all Tier 4 experts sought to reach. At the Advanced Master Magician standard, players could rely on their will to manipulate the mana around them, utilizing the ambient mana as if it were an extension of their bodies. They could have their own natural domain. An ordinary Tier 3 player who reached the Advanced Master Magician standard would be invincible among all opponents below Tier 4, the true Tier 4 standard, not monsters or players that possessed basic attributes at the Tier 4 standard. One could easily imagine how powerful the Advanced Master Magician subclass was. Could this be the soul array's effects? This was the only explanation Faux could come up with for this situation after giving the matter some thought. Manipulating intangible mana was an incredibly complex task. Players needed a lot of time to adapt their minds before they could do it. Now, however, he could exert a great degree of control over mana despite barely putting any thought to the task. It was as if his mind had automated this process for him. Amazing. Truly amazing. The change to my magical talent is simply heaven-defying. Faux was filled with an indescribable sense of shock as he controlled the mana domain that had naturally formed around him. Currently, he could freely control all the mana within a 30-yard radius as if it were one of his limbs. With just a thought, he could have the ambient mana attack someone. Moreover, this attack would carry power at the peak of Tier 3, just by him materializing the ambient mana. If he were to use a magic array, the power he could exhibit would be even greater. After a brief moment of excitement, Faux calmed himself and put away the crimson-eyed Sword Saint's memory crystal. He then took out a tattered notebook from his bag. Originally, I thought that I could learn this thing's contents only after reaching Tier 4. I never dreamed that I could actually learn them now. That Faux Saint Devourer really has helped me a bunch, Faux muttered, chuckling as he looked at the notebook in his hands. The notebook he held was none other than the mana forging notes he had received from the famed smith Alba Grey. Although he had only one volume of the mana forging notes, the value of this one volume could easily rival that of a legendary item. It was an item that the various empires of God's domain would go crazy over. This was because the forging techniques recorded within the mana forging notes could serve as the foundation of an empire. Of course, learning the recorded forging techniques was an incredibly difficult task. Firstly, one had to have reached the Advanced Master Magician standard. This requirement was because Alba Grey's mana forging techniques were different from conventional forging techniques, which prioritized the materials used. Instead, Alba Grey's techniques prioritized mana, while the materials used were only of secondary importance. One could consider Alba Grey's techniques a kind of lost ancient technology. Faux immediately started manipulating the mana around him to break the mana seal on the notebook. In order to remove the mana seal, one needed to use one's mana to decode it. Utilizing brute force would permanently destroy the notebook's contents. The mana seal consisted of 27 magic arrays, every one of which was at the basic Grandmaster standard. The degree of precision one needed to have when decoding these magic arrays was akin to threading a needle. Only those capable of freely manipulating mana would succeed in lifting the mana seal. This was also the reason why Faux had left the mana forging notes sitting inside his bag all this time. 1 array. 2 arrays. 3 arrays. After working on the mana seal for more than 2 hours, Faux finally decoded the last magic array on the mana forging notes. Immediately, all mana within his office seemed to have been summoned, as it surged toward the mana forging notes. This mana then transformed into texts and images that flowed into his brain. For a time, Faux felt as if his head would explode. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The amount of information contained within the mana forging notes was comparable to that of the small mobile fortress design. If not for his concentration having reached the Tier 4 standard already, he would have most definitely lost consciousness. The information transfer continued for 20 minutes. Then, the mana forging notes closed itself, and the mana seal reappeared on it. As for Faux, he slumped back in his chair, his complexion indescribably pale. However, despite his miserable state, his eyes sparkled with joy and shock. Before Faux could snap out of his daze, he suddenly received a call request from Yulan. Guild leader, we just received news that the Faux Saint Monster army is currently crossing Star Moon Kingdom's borders. Rough estimates put its numbers at over 4 million. We have also spotted some of Saint's Hand's members among the monsters, Yulan reported anxiously. They're finally here? Faux revealed a faint smile on his face when he heard Yulan's words. Have Melancholic and the others ready the materials. I'll head over immediately. Chapter 2667, Foundation Skyrockets Silverwing Town, Zero Wing's residence, second underground floor. At this moment, over 300 NPCs stood inside an underground hall, which was half the size of a football field. These NPCs all looked old and injured. The 100-plus Tier 3 experts of Zero Wing present could not help their confusion over the presence of these NPCs, with the situation outside so tense already. Why did the guild leader gather us here instead of having us prepare for battle? A tall and thin level 115 man wearing the emblem of Zero Wing's main force reserve member muttered, perturbed. This tall and thin man was once the vice commander of an adventurer team. He had joined Zero Wing not that long ago and had gained his position as a reserve member of the main force only after Faux had left the eastern continent. Hence, he did not have a very clear idea of just how powerful the guild's foundations were. What the man understood very clearly was just how powerful the Faux Saint monsters were, especially after their numbers reached a certain scale. Several million Faux Saint monsters charging towards Silverwing Town was definitely a disaster. However, instead of further strengthening the town's defenses, Faux had actually gathered all of the guild's Tier 3 reserve main force members tasked with defending Silverwing Town in this basement hall. In fact, he had even kept them waiting here for such a long time with nothing to do but look at these old and ailing NPCs. This was simply insane. At this moment, many of the Tier 3 experts present were also confused by this situation. Silverwing Town was by no means a small place. There were many locations that needed defending. They still needed to organize the guild's other Tier 3 experts and Tier 2 members. They had already been tight for time, yet they had actually wasted 2 whole hours idling here. The players gathered could not help but wonder if Faux had given up on Silverwing Town already. To Zero Wing's core upper echelon, Silverwing Town might be just another one of the guild's residences. However, for players like themselves who had lived in Silverwing Town all this time, it was their home. Just as everyone was grumbling about the current situation, Yulan and Melancholic Smile walked to the staircase leading upstairs. They then flanked the staircase and quietly looked at the man descending it, a respectful expression appearing on their faces. Guild leader, all Tier 3 reserve main force members with a position of Viscount or above are here. They have already signed the confidentiality contract. With the personal guard slots they have, we will be able to accommodate all of the NPCs gathered, Melancholic Smile quietly reported to Faux. Alright, let's begin, Faux said, nodding. Originally, he had been keeping the water of life top secret. After all, only by doing so would he have an easier time collecting injured NPCs with good potential. However, now that God's domain had developed to such a state, he no longer had the leeway for such secrecy. After Faux said so, Melancholic Smile had the gathered NPCs line up before her. She then distributed the water of life to every one of them, the situation further confusing the reserve main force members present. What are they doing? What dense life energy? Why do all these NPCs look so excited? Many people knew of the water of life in God's domain, but not many people had seen it in person. In the eyes of Zero Wing's reserve main force members, Melancholic Smile was merely distributing potions brimming with life energy to the NPCs gathered. However, When these NPCs received the potion, their gloomy and lifeless expressions immediately brightened up, their eyes glowing with hope and energy. Every one of these NPCs even excitedly thanked Melancholic Smile and swore loyalty to her. This situation baffled the Zero Wing members. They could all tell that these NPCs were not personal guards but independent NPCs. There should be no way these NPCs would show such gratitude toward players, much less take the initiative to swear loyalty to a player. As the reserve main force members were stewing in confusion, frightening auras burst forth from the gathered NPCs, one after another. Previously, none of these gathered NPCs was a match even for ordinary Tier 2 NPCs. Now, however, even the weakest of them radiated an aura that made even the refinement realm experts present shudder. When the auras of these 300-plus NPCs flooded the hall, the 100-plus reserve main force members could not help stumbling back with nervous expressions as they cautiously eyed the NPCs before them. At this moment, they could tell that, so long as these NPCs willed it, none of them would leave this basement alive. Not to mention, the strongest few auras even made them feel as if they stood before a bottomless abyss. The owners of these auras were definitely not just ordinary Tier 3 NPCs. While bathed in these auras, everyone felt as if they were standing inside a muddy swamp, their bodies incredibly sluggish. In fact, they had also lost control over the ambient mana around them. A mana domain? At this moment, even Yulan goggled in shock at this situation. Although she knew that Shifeng and Melancholic Smile had gathered these old and ailing NPCs for a purpose, she never imagined that they would be carrying out such an ambitious enterprise. Not only did they instantly turn 300-plus old and ailing NPCs into lively tigers, but 3 of these NPCs even possessed a mana domain. This was simply unbelievable. Normally, a naturally occurring mana domain was something only Tier 4 NPCs possessed. A mana domain was also the biggest difference between Tier 3 and Tier 4 NPCs and the reason why Tier 4 NPCs could trounce Tier 3 NPCs. It was also because of this mana domain that Saint's Hand had never dared stretch their hands toward Silverwing Town. After all, Silverwing Town had the protection of the Magic King Craig Midlands, who had already been promoted to Tier 4. In front of the Magic King, Tier 3 players would be one-shot kills. Now, out of the 300-plus NPCs present, there were actually 3 NPCs with a mana domain. This meant that these 3 NPCs were only one short step away from Tier 4. Amazing. The harvest this time is massive. Shifeng himself was surprised by this outcome. Although there were no Tier 4 NPCs in the batch of recovered NPCs this time, just gaining 3 Tier 3 NPCs with a mana domain was plenty amazing already. After all, so long as these 3 NPCs received sufficient resources, reaching Tier 4 should be a shoo-in. Moreover, aside from these 3 NPCs, the quality of the other 300-plus NPCs was considerably good as well. Of the other 300-plus NPCs, 1 actually possessed growth potential at the Dark Gold rank, 11 at the Fine Gold rank, 151 at the Secret Silver rank, and the rest at the Mysterious Iron rank. In God's domain, NPCs that possessed growth potential at the Fine Gold rank or above could only be found by luck. Aqua Rose had already swept through the old and ailing NPCs of numerous countries once. The fact that they could obtain so many NPCs at the Dark Gold and Fine Gold standard in the second batch was truly incredible. After all, any random Tier 3 NPC at the Fine Gold rank could suppress current Tier 3 domain realm experts. Even the various superpowers would not possess more than a handful of such existences. Now, Zero Wing had just gained 15 of such NPCs. Moreover, 3 of them possessed a mana domain, of which 2 were at the Fine Gold rank and 1 was at the Dark Gold rank. If the various superpowers were to learn of this haul, they would definitely die of envy. Meanwhile, after a brief moment of silence in the hall, Shifeng turned his gaze toward the reserve main force members assembled before him. Alright, stop daydreaming. Line up according to the number assigned to you and start signing a contract with these NPCs, Shifeng said with a clap of his hands. Shifeng's words triggered an uproar among the gathered players. Crap. Is this for real? Even the weakest among these NPCs is at the mysterious iron rank, right? We can contract these NPCs as our personal guards. Everyone felt as if they were in a dream when they heard Shifeng's words. The fact that the guild could recruit so many powerful NPCs was already plenty amazing. Now, however, they were being told that they could have these NPCs as their personal guards. They couldn't believe their ears. The various first-rate guilds treated even mysterious iron guards as family heirlooms. Normally, only the guild elders would have the qualifications to contract such NPCs as personal guards. As for secret silver guards, they belonged to the guild leader and grand elders. Everyone else should not even think of obtaining them. Now, however, Zero Wing was actually letting mere reserve members of its main force contract with mysterious iron guards and above. This situation was even more fabulous than if the guild had granted every one of them a level 100+ epic weapon. However, in no time at all, everyone snapped out of their daze and dashed forward to line up before Shifeng. As for the distribution of the NPCs, Shifeng first granted every player in line a secret silver NPC. As for the 2 dark gold NPCs, he assigned Melancholic Smile and Yulan 1 each. He also granted both of them and Liang Jing 1 fine gold NPC each. This way, the 3 of them would no longer have to worry about their security when traveling around God's domain. As for the remaining fine gold NPCs, he assigned them to the 11 people in line who had made the most contributions to the guild. Upon seeing this, the other Zero Wing members inevitably grew envious. That was a fine gold guard they were talking about. With the strength of a fine gold guard, one would not have to worry even when coming across a 100-man, Tier 3 team. In fact, the Tier 3 team would most likely try to avoid the fine gold guard. This is wonderful. With the addition of these personal guards, we should have no problem withstanding the Faux Saint monster's attack. Yulan breathed out a sigh of relief when the distribution of the personal guards was over. Although Silverwing Town was only an advanced town, Zero Wing had invested plenty of resources and funds into its development. While its defensive capability might not rival that of a guild city, its capability was not that far off either. Not to mention, the town also had 5 magic towers and a Tier 4 NPC protecting it. With the addition of so many Tier 3 personal guards, there shouldn't be any problem defending Silverwing Town from the Faux Saint monsters. Withstand? Shifeng shook his head at Yulan's sigh. Sneering, he continued, since they dare to come, then they shouldn't think of leaving anymore. After saying so, Shifeng tasked Yulan and Melancholic Smile with arranging Silverwing Town's defenses. As for himself, he made his way to Silverwing Town's Town Lord's mansion. Inside the control room of the Town Lord's mansion, Shifeng took out 600 mana stones and arranged them above the core magic array. The mana forging notes recorded plenty of powerful items. However, the highlight of the volume he received from Alba Grey was a special magic array capable of strengthening other magic arrays to whole new heights. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Of course, this improved strength did not come for free. The strengthening would triple the consumption of the target magic array. The target magic array would also take longer to recover naturally. However, compared to the possible benefits, this was a small price to pay. When Shifeng finished drawing the special magic array using the mana stones, a crimson pillar suddenly emerged from the core magic array. Following which, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered Shifeng's ears. System: Silverwing Town has met the qualifications for promotion to a basic city. Do you wish to promote it to a basic city? Chapter 2668, Siege Battle at Silverwing Town. The town can be promoted, just like that? Shifeng was surprised as he looked at the notification window at the corner of his vision. Although Silverwing Town was developing rapidly and its promotion to a basic city was only a matter of time, its attaining the promotion qualifications so soon caught him unawares. He never thought that there would be such a benefit to strengthening a town's core magic array. The defense of a basic city was significantly more substantial than that of an advanced town. The number of NPC guards one could hire would also undergo a qualitative transformation. This boost was especially advantageous for strongholds located in the Orc Empire. Recently, more and more players had started operating in the Orc Empire. Due to the very low number of player strongholds there, any stronghold that could ensure the safety of its players would become extremely popular, which would, in turn, guarantee its rapid development. However, despite receiving this unexpected boon, Faux did not choose to promote Silverwing Town yet. Instead, he focused on the crimson light pillar that had appeared at the center of the room. He then took out piles of magic crystals and started channeling the mana of the light pillar into Silverwing Town's various magic arrays. While upgrading Silverwing Town now would indeed raise its defensive capability by a significant margin, doing so would come at a great price. All the players inside the town would be teleported out of the town during the promotion process. With the Faux Saint army approaching, there was simply no time to upgrade Silverwing Town. Otherwise, Zero Wing's members might have to fight the millions of Faux Saint monsters without the help of the city's defensive structures. Moreover, now that he had strengthened Silverwing Town's core magic array, its performance would surpass even that of the core magic arrays of ordinary basic cities. There was simply no need to take such a big risk. The rampaging mana inside the hall started flowing into the core magic array, together with the mana the magic crystals released. The core magic array then directed this mana into the various magic arrays throughout Silverwing Town, reinforcing them. 3 arrays. 6 arrays. 9 arrays. As Silverwing Town's magic arrays got strengthened one after another, the town's ambient mana changed. By the time half of Silverwing Town's magic arrays were strengthened, a layer of red mist had appeared above the town, enveloping it completely. Quick, look! Why is there a red mist above the town? What's going on? Is this Zero Wing's doing? It's highly possible. The ambient mana seems to have become slightly wilder. So long as we use this mana, the power of our skills and spells should increase substantially. With this, we should have an easier time repelling the Faux Saint army. The players in Silverwing Town quickly noticed the changes to the town's mana and could not help discussing them. Many of the adventurer team members preparing for battle relaxed slightly. Silverwing Town was one of the few player strongholds in the Orc Empire that were open to independent players. Hence, many independent players had decided to support Zero Wing against the approaching Faux Saint army. In addition, Zero Wing had also set up a contribution system for the players participating in the town's defense. Through this system, players could earn contribution points and exchange these points for rewards. Hence, even more independent players had chosen to stay and fight for Silverwing Town. It seems Black Flame isn't completely unprepared for this upcoming battle. Illusory Words, who currently stood on the town's wall, sighed in relief when she saw the red mist covering the town. After seeing Feng's previous performance against the Faux Saint Devourer, Crimson Emperor had decided to go all out in helping Zero Wing defend Silverwing Town. However, Illusory Words wasn't confident of success. After all, the Faux Saint monsters were simply too many. Moreover, even the weakest Faux Saint monster was at the Great Lord rank. The most they could do was persevere against the Faux Saint monster's assault. That was right. Persevere. With their current forces, repelling the Faux Saint army would be impossible. All they could do was persevere. Fortunately, Feng had killed the Faux Saint Devourer. With this, even the strongest Faux Saint monster remaining would be only at the Grand Lord rank. Silverwing Town's defensive magic array would have no problem tanking the hits of Grand Lords. Meanwhile, so long as they ensured the continuous replenishment of the energy reserves of the town's defensive magic array before they got depleted, the Faux Saint monsters would not be able to take even a single step into Silverwing Town. With the intellect of those Faux Saint monsters, they wouldn't bother wasting too much time on a single task. After seeing that they couldn't break through the town's defensive magic array even after several days, they would naturally retreat. It seems Black Flame has quite a few tricks up his sleeves. He's actually able to make the town's mana go berserk. With this, the strength of the town's defensive magic array should have increased by quite a bit. While the town's defensive magic array has indeed been improved, it will still need to withstand all those Faux Saint destroyers. You should know that Faux Saint monsters have destroyed NPC cities before. What can a guild town possibly do against an army of them? The various superpowers members hidden inside the town disdained the transformation to Silverwing Town's mana. They also considered Faux very foolish. While the performance of the town's defensive magic array had indeed improved significantly, there was still a limit to the magic array's energy reserves. Faced with the attacks of tens of thousands of Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint destroyers, how long could the magic array's energy reserves possibly last? Even the defensive magic arrays of NPC cities had fallen swiftly before the Faux Saint monsters. In fact, many of these NPC cities also had a large number of level 150 NPC guards and a level 180, tier 3 magistrate to defend them. In the end, the Faux Saint monsters still managed to drain the defensive magic array's energy reserves and destroyed the cities. Shortly after Silverwing Town's transformation, news of it quickly reached the Fire Dragon Empire's Flame Dragon City. Interesting. Since he's able to agitate the mana of a town to increase the performance of the town's defensive magic array, it seems he didn't offend those Faux Saint monsters and Saint's Hand without any forethought. A smirk appeared on Cold Shadow's face when she read the report she just received. What a pity. This development might have posed a problem for those Faux Saint monsters in Saint's Hand a few days ago, but it is futile now. After Cold Shadow said so, she turned her gaze to the video live stream playing before her. What this live stream showed was none other than the Faux Saint army that was marching towards Silverwing Town and was currently within 5,000 yards of Silverwing Town already. The monsters were so numerous that they covered all the land around Silverwing Town. From what she could see, there were easily more than 100,000 Faux Saint destroyers there, almost double the initial projections. Moreover, aside from the Faux Saint destroyers, there were also quite a few gigantic figures moving amidst this army, and the other Faux Saint monsters clustered around these gigantic figures. At this moment, White Feather entered the VIP room Cold Shadow occupied and said respectfully, "Vice Guild Leader, the various superpowers representatives have arrived already. Should we head over now?" "Alright, let's go." Cold Shadow nodded. She then dismissed the video playing before her and left the Scorching Flame restaurant. At the same time, the players standing guard atop Silverwing Town's walls were dumbfounded by the sight before them. This. How is this possible? No. This can't be real. This must be a joke. When the players standing on the walls looked at the massive army before them, despair and reluctance overwhelmed them. 8. There were 8 mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourers. Is this the strength that Saint's Hand has been relying on all this time? Illusory Words, who similarly stood on the town's wall, could not help a bitter smile when she saw the 8 Faux Saint Devourers. She had anticipated that Saint's Hand had kept a trump card hidden. Otherwise, it wouldn't have had the confidence to take action so close to Silverwing Town, nor would it have put its precious mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourer at such great risk. However, she never thought that Saint's Hand had actually managed to produce so many Faux Saint Devourers already. At this moment, even the various spectating superpowers were stunned by this situation. Too strong. The Faux Saint army boasted not only over 100,000 Faux Saint destroyers but also 8 Faux Saint Devourers. With such a force, let alone destroying Silverwing Town, even capturing one of Star Moon Kingdom's main cities wouldn't be a problem. After all, the only real threat in main city-ranked NPC cities was the level 180, Tier 4 magistrates tasked with defending them. As for the remaining level 150 NPCs that were at Tier 2 or Tier 3, while they did pose a problem, they weren't undefeatable. At the same time, several thousand players wearing the guild emblem of Saint's Hand were hiding in a forest several thousand yards away from Silverwing Town. Among them, 1,000 magical class players were currently drawing a gigantic and complex magic array, which constantly drew on the ambient mana and reduced its density. Black Flame. I'll show you just how foolish your previous actions are and make you regret everything you've done. Thousand Eyes, who currently radiated an extremely weak aura, sneered as he looked at the Silverwing Town displayed on the magic mirror before him. No, I should say that you won't even have time to regret. Your Silverwing town will turn to dust before you know it. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, inside Silverwing Town's Town Lord's mansion, while Faux was quietly inspecting the performance of the town's strengthened magic arrays through the core magic array, Yulan burst into the room with an ugly expression on her face. Guild leader, according to the information we received from the walls, aside from over 100,000 Faux Saint Destroyers, the Faux Saint army this time also has 8 Faux Saint Devourers, Yulan said in a grim tone as she gazed at Faux. It might be fine if only 1 or 2 Faux Saint Devourers had appeared. At that time, they could simply have Craig Midlands take action. However, the appearance of 8 Faux Saint Devourers completely messed up their plans. With so many Faux Saint Devourers attacking, it wouldn't matter even if Faux transformed into a black dragon again. They're here? Seeing the grim look on Yulan's face, Faux said calmly, let's go take a look, then. Chapter 2669, Power of Mana. Silverwing Town, Main Gates Wall. Currently, a large number of players were trying to squeeze their way up to the top of the wall, which was over a dozen meters high, to get a better look at the Faux Saint army. However, when these players arrived on top, every one of them found the scene that greeted them shocking. The Faux Saint monsters were so numerous that their figures dotted the land all the way to the horizon. Moreover, even the weakest among them was a level 110 Great Lord. As this endless army of monsters gradually encircled Silverwing Town, it looked as if night had descended. This scene alone already evoked fear in everyone. Why are there so many mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourers? Can we really stop them? Panic and despair swept through the independent players that had chosen to help defend Silverwing Town as they stared at the scene before them. Originally, they thought that, with over 300,000 players fighting for Silverwing Town, combined with the town's defensive magic array, they should still have a chance to emerge victorious. After all, to win, they simply had to distract 50,000 or 60,000 Faux Saint Destroyers for a certain period. However, the Faux Saint army that appeared before Silverwing Town was far stronger than they anticipated, over 100,000 Faux Saint Destroyers and 8 mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourers. Everyone's confidence vanished at the sight of this army. At this moment, let alone the independent players present, even Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words were shocked. Over 100,000 Faux Saint Destroyers and 8 Faux Saint Devourers. These Faux Saint monsters really think highly of us, Unyielding Heart, who had reached level 116 already, said, a bitter smile forming on his face as he took in the 8 gigantic figures standing some distance away from Silverwing Town. In order to assist Zero Wing in defending Silverwing Town, Unyielding Soul had dispatched its strongest trump card legion and even sent over 2 tier 4 summoning scrolls and more than 100 heavy ballistas. According to his estimates, this force, combined with Crimson Emperors and Zero Wings, should have no problem defending Silverwing Town. However, it would seem that he had still underestimated the strength of these Faux Saint monsters. At this moment, let alone the 8 Faux Saint Devourers, just the 100,000 plus Faux Saint Destroyers were already more than enough to instill despair in everyone. After all, the Faux Saint Destroyers were Grand Lord ranked monsters. Ordinary Tier 3 experts couldn't take them on one-on-one. Only multiple people working together, with the help of the town's war weapons, could prevent these Faux Saint Destroyers from attacking the town's defensive magic array and walls. As for the Tier 4 creatures they could summon, these things would be far from adequate against tens of thousands of Faux Saint Destroyers. The only thing these summoned creatures could do was defend a portion of the town's walls and reduce the pressure the town's players faced. However, with the 8 Faux Saint Devourers around, these Tier 4 summoned creatures wouldn't even be able to lessen the pressure on the town's defenders. Illusory Words nodded in agreement with Unyielding Heart's words, complex emotions flickering in her eyes. We can only try our best to defend the town. A sense of powerlessness overwhelmed Illusory Words as she looked at the Faux Saint Devourers several thousand yards away commanding the other Faux Saint monsters. Although she had confidence in Faux, she doubted that even he had expected such a powerful army to appear at Silverwing Town's doorstep. In fact, even the various superpowers did not expect the Faux Saint monsters to develop at such a frightening rate. After all, only a little more than a day had passed since Crimson Emperor had learned about the birth of the first Faux Saint Devourer, yet the Faux Saint monsters had managed to add 8 more Faux Saint Devourers to their number. Even if they could stop these Faux Saint monsters for a day, it was highly unlikely they could stop these monsters for 2 days. During the time everyone was sighing and feeling powerless, a golden beam of light suddenly appeared in a forest some distance away from Silverwing Town, shooting straight into the sky. Even from several thousand yards away, the beam was clearly visible. Along with the appearance of this golden beam, the dusky sky became as bright as day. At the same time, the density of the mana surrounding Silverwing Town thinned out considerably as if something sucked the ambient mana away. Now, even players who weren't particularly sensitive to mana felt a slight discomfort. This is the Soul Annihilation Curse. Illusory Words' complexion turned indescribably grim when she saw the pillar of mana rising into the sky. Are Saint's Hands people crazy? They actually used such an area-sealing curse. The Soul Annihilation Curse was a super-rare sealing barrier in God's domain. When activated, it could lock down a very large area, preventing players from leaving the sealed space while the barrier was still up, and thin out the mana within the barrier. Meanwhile, not only would players that died within the barrier suffer a much more severe death penalty, but their souls would be weakened for 15 days as well. The cost to activate the Soul Annihilation Curse was equally astonishing: the permanent sacrifice of 1000 level 100+, Tier 2 magical class players and 100 Tier 3 magical class players. This was a permanent death they were talking about. The players that activated this magic array would have their game characters permanently deleted, and they would have to start all over again if they wished to continue playing. Due to this reason, although quite a few superpowers had obtained the Soul Annihilation Curse, none of them ever dared to use it. However, as Silverwing Town's players stood dazed in shock, a gigantic magic mirror suddenly appeared above the town. It displayed Saint's Hands members, and standing at the lead of these players was none other than Thousand Eyes, whom Faux had killed just recently. Black Flame, you didn't see this coming, right? Thousand Eyes sneered. I said that you'd regret it. Weren't you very powerful? Now, I'll have you watch as everyone in Silverwing Town gets devoured by the Faux Saint army. When Thousand Eyes' chilling words echoed throughout Silverwing Town, the players in the town shuddered involuntarily. This was simply madness. Saint's Hand had sacrificed not only 1000 level 100+ Tier 2 magical class players but also 100 Tier 3 experts. This was something even super guilds wouldn't dare to do. After all, even to a super guild, 100 Tier 3 experts represented significant combat power. Zero Wing is truly doomed this time. Sure enough, Saint's Hand is filled with a bunch of lunatics. They actually dare use such a card. With this, not only will Zero Wing and all of its allies have their members devoured by those Faux Saint monsters, but they'll even have their souls weakened as well. Despite being spectators, the various superpowers members hidden inside Silverwing Town shuddered in fear when they saw the maniacal smile on Thousand Eyes' face. While everyone was falling into despair, several figures appeared above Silverwing Town's main gate. One of these figures belonged to none other than Zero Wing's guild leader, Black Flame. After arriving above the main gate, Faux glanced at the magic mirror in the sky and said nonchalantly, "How noisy. Isn't it just a soul annihilation curse? Do you think this thing is good for anything?" Although Faux did not speak very loudly, with the entire Silverwing Town dead silent right now, everyone heard his words very clearly. Hence, the entire town immediately went into an uproar. No one ever thought that even after things had developed to such a point, Faux would still dare to provoke Thousand Eyes. Was he so eager to die? Is he tired of living? Pretending to be calm. We'll see how he continues pretending. I'm guessing that Black Flame must have realized the hopelessness of the situation and is merely sassing to get the load off his chest. When the various superpowers members saw Feng's calm expression and heard his bold claim through their magic mirrors, they could not help scoffing. The soul annihilation curse itself indeed did not pose any direct threat to players. However, the millions of Faux Saint monsters standing outside the town were definitely a nightmare for all players. You think it's useless? In that case, let's see if this soul annihilation curse is really useless or not, once the Faux Saint army starts attacking. Thousand Eyes said. Instead of getting angry at Shifeng's words, he started chuckling instead. Oh. As soon as Thousand Eyes finished speaking, the Faux Saint monsters surrounding Silverwing town promptly charged forward. When the army of millions advanced, it looked as if a tsunami was sweeping across the land. The earth shattered underfoot, and explosions kept reverberating through the air. Everyone inside Silverwing town gasped at the sight. Some Tier 3 experts even retreated unconsciously. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, so noisy. Shifeng pointed a finger at 3 Faux Saint Devourers charging amidst the army. Immediately, the 5 magic towers spread across Silverwing town each released a crimson beam that converged in the middle of the town before shooting into the sky. Before anyone could react, a gigantic, crimson beam descended upon the Faux Saint army. The instant the crimson beam made contact, the earth shattered. Immediately afterward, the crimson beam expanded into the surroundings until it covered a 300-yard radius. When the beam disappeared, almost everything within the AoE had vanished without a trace. Chapter 2670, Silent Silverwing Town. When the crimson pillar outside Silverwing Town faded away, everyone momentarily froze and fell silent, the players inside the town as well as the Faux Saint monsters charging toward it. For a moment, time seemed to stop for Silverwing Town and its surroundings. Just one hit. Aside from the Grand Lord and Mythic-ranked Faux Saint monsters, everything within the Crimson Beam's 300-yard radius had disappeared into the void. Not one of the 10,000 or so Faux Saint saboteurs caught within the area survived. The magnitude of this attack was simply unbelievable. As for the Faux Saint destroyers and Faux Saint devourers that remained alive, they were clearly heavily injured. Moreover, the Faux Saint devourers were barely able to move, and they were currently struggling to escape the void that formed around them. The Faux Saint destroyers were incapable of moving at all, only able to watch helplessly as the void slowly enveloping them closed and trapped them for the rest of their lives. This, illusory words and unyielding heart were momentarily at a loss for words when they saw this scene, shock and excitement flaring in their eyes. This attack was simply too absurd. This one attack not only exiled close to 1,000 Faux Saint destroyers to the void but also heavily injured 3 Faux Saint devourers. This outcome reduced the pressure Silverwing Town's defenders had to face significantly. Meanwhile, when Saints Heart's members saw this scene through their magic mirrors, they were similarly stunned. They never thought that Silverwing Town's magic towers possessed the power to heavily injure the Faux Saint devourers. You just heavily injured 3 Faux Saint devourers. This battle is nowhere close to over. Thousand Eyes said nonchalantly when he saw Silverwing Town's players revealing joyous expressions. It was very normal for war weapons to wreak large-scale destruction in a siege battle. While the power of Silverwing Town's magic towers somewhat exceeded their initial estimates, this difference would not affect the overall picture. For the Faux Saint army, which consisted of over 4 million monsters, a loss of 10,000 monsters was practically negligible. Not to mention, the Magic Tower's attack had a very long cooldown. By the time the Magic Towers were ready to attack again, the Faux Saint monsters would have long since arrived before Silverwing Town. Moreover, the Faux Saint army went berserk because of the Magic Tower's attack. After the 5 remaining Faux Saint devourers let loose angry roars, the other Faux Saint monsters resumed charging at Silverwing Town with even greater ferocity, their speed at least 20% faster than before. Upon seeing this, the defending players standing atop Silverwing Town's walls could not help growing nervous. The Magic Tower's combined attack was indeed astonishing, but the Faux Saint monsters, which had managed to instantly fill the gap in their battle formation, were even more astonishing. These monsters made it seem as if the previous attack never happened at all. All ballistas and turrets, prepare to fire. Aim for the densest locations as much as possible. When the Faux Saint army resumed its advance with even greater vigor, Unyielding Heart, who had commanded dozens of large-scale battles, immediately shouted out the necessary orders. At his behest, Silverwing Town's defenders promptly recovered from their fear and prepared to attack. All magical units, start chanting your incantations. Make sure those destroyers don't get close to the walls. Similarly, Illusory Words commanded the magical class players standing atop the walls to prepare their spells. Afterward, she started chanting a Tier 3 curse of her own. As commands were issued one after another, the nervous and frightened defenders also gradually stabilized their emotions. For a time, the defenders watched quietly as the Faux Saint army closed in. 1,300 yards. 1,200 yards. 1,000 yards. Fire! Unyielding Heart shouted. Immediately, hundreds of ballistas and dozens of arrow towers and defense turrets launched their attacks simultaneously, the firing sounds echoing throughout the town. In the next moment, several hundred blazing streaks of light descended on the Faux Saint army like a meteor shower, the attacks shaking the ground and kicking up dust and dirt. Tens of thousands of Faux Saint monsters were also sent flying into the air, and huge craters formed wherever the attacks landed. The sight was simply spectacular. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, the Faux Saint army did not falter in the slightest. In no time at all, the endless Faux Saint monsters filled in the gaps created by the war weapons attacks, the madness of the Faux Saint monsters surpassing everyone's expectations. Reload and aim for the vanguard. Unyielding Heart shouted, a frown forming on his face when he saw this scene. Although he had long since expected this to happen, he still could not help his shock when actually witnessing it. After several rounds of attacks from the town's war weapons, although they had failed to kill even one Faux Saint destroyer, they had killed quite a number of Faux Saint saboteurs, as well as heavily injuring more than 200,000 Faux Saint saboteurs. Unfortunately, compared to the Faux Saint army in its entirety, this number was still insignificant. In the next moment, the first wave of Faux Saint monsters arrived within 100 yards of Silverwing Town's walls. Illusory Words and the other ranged players standing on the walls promptly released their strongest skills and spells. For a time, tens of thousands of skills and spells bombarded the Faux Saint monsters at the forefront. However, just when everyone thought that the Faux Saint monsters would get hit and have their charge interrupted, a shocking scene occurred. In the next moment, as if they were veterans of the battlefield, the Faux Saint monsters started wielding their weapons to block the incoming attacks, mitigating most of the damage from these attacks. How is this possible? Purple Eye, who was casting her spells on the town's wall, was stunned by this scene. These Faux Saint monsters had even blocked a large portion of the attacks launched by Tier 3 experts. Only Tier 3 Refinement Realm experts and above managed to land their attacks on these Faux Saint monsters. Fools! Do you think the Faux Saint monsters before you are the same as those you met a few days ago? Thousand Eyes sneered as he looked at Silverwing Town's defenders. Victory might be possible for Silverwing Town's players if they were going up against an army of ordinary monsters. However, they were up against the Faux Saint army. Every monster in the Faux Saint army possessed intellect surpassing that of ordinary monsters. Thousand Eyes' words immediately silenced everyone. Faced with such opponents, just how were they supposed to continue fighting? Only the attacks of the war weapons and a small number of Tier 3 experts were effective, everyone else's were utterly useless. During the time everyone was distracted by Thousand Eyes' words, the 5 intact Faux Saint Devourers suddenly leaped toward the space above the walls. Not good. Stop them. Unyielding Heart's complexion turned indescribably grim when he saw the Faux Saint Devourers launching an attack. While the town's defensive magic array had indeed been strengthened, the Soul Annihilation Curse had thinned the ambient mana considerably, effectively nullifying the upgrade the defensive magic array had just received. Moreover, an advanced town's defensive magic array couldn't hope to withstand the attacks of several mythic monsters. Before anyone could react, 5 spears tore through space and converged on a single point on the defensive magic array. A combination combat technique? Illusory Words goggled in shock at the 5 Faux Saint Devourers' attacks. The fact that the Faux Saint monsters could use combat techniques was already plenty astonishing. Now, they actually used a combination combat technique, something very few players could execute. This was simply a nightmare. Guild leader Black Flame, what a pity. I never thought that you all would fall so quickly, Thousand Eyes said, a delighted smirk appearing on his face as he looked at Faux, who had remained silent all this time. So long as Silverwing Town's defensive magic array shattered, the players inside the town would be no different from lambs to the slaughter. The Tier 4 NPC guarding the town wouldn't matter. After all, even a ferocious tiger couldn't beat a pack of wolves. Boom! A loud explosion shook the entire battlefield, the shockwave of the impact so powerful that even the Faux Saint destroyers nearby stumbled. It seems Zero Wing is really doomed now. When the various superpowers spectating members saw the shattered space above the walls, they shook their heads. The Faux Saint Devourers originally already possessed extraordinary strength. Now that they had used a combination combat technique, the power of their joint attack reached the peak of Tier 4, which definitely wasn't something an advanced town's defensive magic array could block. However, as the black void vanished and the dust settled, the various superpowers members with gleeful expressions on their faces were stunned. At this moment, the faint red barrier enveloping the town actually remained intact. In fact, it didn't even have the tiniest of cracks. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This. How is this possible? At this moment, let alone the various superpowers spectating members, even Thousand Eyes gaped in shock, his eyes glued to the red barrier. This was a peak Tier 4 attack they were talking about. During the time the entire battlefield had fallen silent, a voice suddenly came from the town's main gate and echoed throughout the battlefield. Is that it? If that is your strongest move, then we can indeed put an end to this farce. Chapter 2671, Powerful Faux Saint Army. As Shifeng's words echoed throughout the battlefield, a gigantic phantom world suddenly manifested in the sky above Silverwing Town. Along with the appearance of this phantom world, every Faux Saint monster in the town's vicinity had their basic attributes reduced by a significant margin, the change causing a commotion all over the silent battlefield. Too strong. So, this is Zero Wing? Earlier, even 5 Faux Saint Devourers working together failed to crack the town's magic barrier. Now that every one of these Devourers has been weakened, these Faux Saint monsters should be impotent against the town's barrier for a short period. Previously, everyone had already fallen into despair over the Faux Saint army's strength. They never thought that Silverwing Town's defensive magic array would be so powerful that even a peak Tier 4 attack couldn't even scratch it. Meanwhile, so long as the town's defensive magic array remained up, the Faux Saint monsters wouldn't be able to touch any of the players inside the town. Moreover, if the defensive magic array could hold out until its energy reserves got replenished, a perfect consumption replenishment cycle could be formed. At which point, the Faux Saint army would have to give up its siege of the town even if it didn't want to. What amazing defensive capabilities! Isn't this defensive magic array already on par with the ones found in intermediate cities? At this moment, besides the independent players present, even Illusory Words and Unyielding Heart were surprised when they saw the town's defensive magic array remaining intact. The Soul Annihilation Curse had clearly thinned out the town's ambient mana by a significant margin already, so the town's defensive magic array should have likewise weakened considerably. Nonetheless, the defensive magic array had actually blocked the combination attack of 5 Faux Saint Devourers. It was simply unheard of for a town's defensive magic array to provide such a formidable defense. Now that Faux had used Miniature World, the Faux Saint Devourers shouldn't even dream of shattering the defensive magic array. Presumptuous. Thousand Eyes frowned slightly when he saw the calm look on Shifeng's face. You merely blocked the Faux Saint Devourer's combination attack once. The defensive magic array's energy reserve is limited. I want to see just how long you can continue acting arrogantly before the Faux Saint army's attacks. Magic arrays in God's domain needed energy to operate. Even if an attack couldn't overcome a defensive magic array's defensive threshold, it would still take a toll on the magic array's energy reserve. With the numbers and strength of the Faux Saint army, shattering the defensive magic array of a main city-ranked NPC city would be possible. Even if the entire army was debuffed by a domain skill, it still was more than sufficient to overcome a town's defensive magic array. As soon as Thousand Eyes finished speaking, the 5 Faux Saint Devourers launched another combination attack on the defensive barrier. At the same time, tens of thousands of other Faux Saint monsters also started bombarding it. Boom! 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 For a time, countless explosions rang out in the space above Silverwing town. This can't go on. We need to stop their attacks. Otherwise, the defensive magic array's energy reserve won't last very long, Unyielding Heart said as he looked at the trembling barrier before him. Individually, the other Faux Saint monsters might not be a match for the Faux Saint Devourers. However, there were simply too many of them. Even if they were currently weakened, they exhausted the defensive magic array's energy reserve much faster than even the 5 Faux Saint Devourers had at full power. My side can summon 2 mythic monsters. We can use them in conjunction with the town's weapons to defend against the assault at the front gate. My side can summon 2 as well. With the strength of 4 mythic monsters, we should be able to eliminate the pressure at the front gate. That way, we can send more Tier 3 experts to support the other sides. Then, all we'd need to do is find a way to distract those 5 Devourers, and we should just barely be able to defend Silverwing Town, Unyielding Heart said after giving the matter some thought. While Tier 3 players might not be capable of doing anything to the weakened Faux Saint Devourers, stopping the weakened Faux Saint Destroyers shouldn't be a problem. This situation was much better than before, when ordinary Tier 3 players were utterly helpless against the Faux Saint Devourers. However, just as Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words reached an agreement, a clear and sweet voice suddenly entered their ears. No need to waste your Tier 4 summoning scrolls. Leave the rest to us. Upon hearing this voice, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words turned reflexively to look at its origin, surprise and confusion flashing across their eyes when they saw its owner. This was because the voice's owner was none other than Silverwing Town's manager, Yulan. Currently, over 100 Tier 3 experts from Zero Wing stood behind Yulan, every one of them at least level 115. Many of them were even at the Refinement Realm standard. This scene rendered Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words speechless momentarily. While the 100-plus Tier 3 experts before the 2 were indeed extraordinary, they were far from enough to resolve Silverwing Town's plight. After all, just the Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint Destroyers attacking the town numbered more than 100,000, what more the Great Lord-ranked Faux Saint Saboteurs. Besides, if these Tier 3 experts wished to stop the Faux Saint army's assault, they would have to do it beyond the town's walls and defensive magic array. Only Tier 4 summoned creatures could possibly go up against so many monsters simultaneously. Tier 3 experts would simply be charging to their deaths. However, before Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words could say anything, Yulan suddenly waved her hand forward. Immediately, every one of Zero Wing's reserve main force members left afterimages as they split up and made their way toward the various sections of the town's walls. After getting into position, they jumped off the walls without hesitation. Have these Zero Wing members lost their minds? The independent players fighting above the town's walls gaped, stupefied, at the actions of Zero Wing's reserve main force members. As for the various superpowers spectating members, they, too, could only gape in shock at this scene. In their opinions, Faux was already plenty crazy. However, these Zero Wing members seemed to be even crazier. Even Tier 3 peak experts would not dare charge into a horde of level 120+ Great Lord and Grand Lord ranked Faux Saint monsters, yet these Zero Wing members, who were nowhere near the Void Realm standard, had actually done so without hesitation. What were they playing at? Fools that are tired of living. Thousand Eyes sneered when he saw Zero Wing's members jumping off the town's walls. The Faux Saint monsters might have had their basic attributes reduced, but their combat standards remained unaffected. Even the weakest Faux Saint Saboteur was not an opponent ordinary Tier 3 experts could hope to match. He could already foresee the scene of the Faux Saint monsters devouring Zero Wing's members in the blink of an eye. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU in front of Silverwing Town's front gate, just as Yulan was about to come into contact with the several Faux Saint destroyers there, she suddenly took out 2 summon guard scrolls from her bag and activated them. 2 figures then emerged from the 2 dazzling summoning arrays before Yulan, one of them, an axe-wielding man with a tall and robust body, and the other, a blonde woman wielding an aquamarine staff. The instant these 2 figures appeared, 2 frightening auras swept the battlefield. Every player on the battlefield shuddered in response. In the next moment, the axe-wielding man transformed into a tornado that blocked all the Faux Saint destroyer attacks aimed at Yulan. In addition, the tornado sent several dozen Faux Saint destroyers and over 100 Faux Saint saboteurs nearby flying over 30 yards away. In the blink of an eye, a clearing appeared before the town's front gate. As Yulan landed, the blonde woman beside her also happened to complete her spell. In the next moment, the battlefield shook as a gigantic rift up to 300 yards long opened up on the battlefield. Not only did the rift separate the Faux Saint monsters from Silverwing Town's walls, but it also devoured several thousand Faux Saint monsters, which suffered over -5 million damage each. All of this happened in just a brief moment. Chapter 2672, Just Stay Here Forever. Aren't they a little too strong? What rank are those 2 personal guards? The independent players present gaped in shock when they saw Yulan's 2 personal guards clearing the area before the town's main gate. Although the Faux Saint monsters had been weakened, ordinary Tier 3 personal guards still shouldn't be able to handle them. In fact, even the slightest mistake could result in a Tier 3 personal guard getting killed instantly by the numerous Faux Saint destroyers. However, with just the help of 2 personal guards, Yulan had easily repelled the 10,000+ Faux Saint monsters in front of the main gate. This was simply unbelievable. 2 dark gold guards. When Illusory Words saw the 2 personal guards standing beside Yulan, shock likewise filled her silvery gray eyes. The feat Yulan's 2 personal guards had just accomplished would be difficult even for a Tier 4 summoned creature. The only explanation Illusory Words could think of for this situation was that both personal guards were at the Dark Gold rank, as only Dark Gold guards had the power to match Tier 4 mythic monsters. However, in the current God's domain, let alone Dark Gold guards, even Fine Gold guards were exceedingly rare, much rarer than even level 100+ epic weapons. Despite being a super first-rate guild, Crimson Emperor had only 6 Fine Gold guards. As for Dark Gold guards, Crimson Emperor still had not obtained even a single one, yet Yulan actually had 2 for herself. What Illusory Words did not know was that only one of Yulan's 2 personal guards was at the Dark Gold rank, the other was at the Fine Gold rank. However, the Magic King Craig Midlands' special ability gave both personal guards a significant boost to their combat power. As a result, they currently possessed the strength to match even mythic monsters. Nevertheless, Illusory Words and Unyielding Heart did not relax at this unexpected development. In fact, their expressions further tensed up because the Faux Saint monsters that got repelled were charging forward once more. Moreover, they were attacking with even greater ferocity this time. In the next moment, several hundred Faux Saint destroyers let loose an angry bellow before grouping up and executing combination combat techniques on Yulan's group. The might of their attacks rivaled a normal attack of a Tier 4 mythic monster. In the blink of an eye, over 30 such attacks assailed Yulan and her 2 personal guards. As for the Faux Saint monsters caught inside the rift, they quickly climbed out of it and rejoined the army in attacking Silverwing Town's defensive magic array. Sure enough, just 2 Dark Gold guards won't be enough to change anything. The strength of the Faux Saint army simply isn't something current players can hope to resist. When the various superpowers members saw this scene, they sighed ruefully. Dark Gold guards were existences that could be obtained only through luck. On a battlefield, a Dark Gold guard could exhibit combat power far greater than a mythic monster of the same level. However, that was only true against players. Against the Faux Saint army, the efforts of even 2 Dark Gold guards were negligible. After all, no matter how powerful a Tier 3 NPC was, they couldn't one-shot Great Lord-ranked monsters, much less Grand Lords. The Faux Saint army could easily pin down Yolan's 2 Dark Gold Guards with just several hundred Faux Saint destroyers. Even if the 2 Dark Gold Guards eventually annihilated these several hundred destroyers, Silverwing Town would have long since fallen by the time they did so. However, just when the Faux Saint army was about to commence another round of attacks on Silverwing Town's defensive magic array, silver summoning arrays appeared outside the town's walls, one after another, over 300 in all. Figures then emerged from these summoning arrays. Immediately afterward, fire, ice, lightning, and wind started bombarding the Faux Saint monsters outside the defensive magic array. Boom. 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 For a time, a plethora of elemental mana inundated the Faux Saint army, and countless Faux Saint monsters screamed in agony, their voices echoing throughout Silverwing Town. How is this possible? When the various superpowers members saw the innumerable Faux Saint monsters outside the town getting sent flying one after another, their fists tightened involuntarily as shock filled their eyes. At this moment, over 300 personal guards stood outside Silverwing Town, every one of them exuding a frightening aura. It was obvious that they were not ordinary personal guards. Aside from the various superpowers members that were spectating the battle through their magic mirrors, the independent players standing atop the town's walls were also gaping in shock, their minds frozen with disbelief. This isn't real, right? Unyielding Heart suspected he was dreaming as he watched the 300-plus personal guards fighting outside Silverwing Town. As a vice guild leader of Unyielding Soul, he had seen powerful personal guards before. However, this was definitely the first time he had seen so many personal guards of such high caliber. Although the majority of these newly appeared personal guards were weaker than Yolan's 2 personal guards, they were still much stronger than ordinary personal guards. In fact, even the weakest personal guard present made Unyielding Heart feel powerless. Meanwhile, after illusory words saw the 300-plus personal guards, she could not help shifting her gaze to Faux, who stood nearby. Is this the real reason behind his confidence? Every one of these 300-plus personal guards was stronger than a Grand Lord of the same level. At this stage of the game, it was unlikely that even the 5 great super guilds possessed such strength. It was no exaggeration to say that, so long as these 300-plus personal guards were present, Silverwing Town would not fall. While NPCs already possessed basic attributes superior to players, after becoming a personal guard, they would gain an additional 10% boost to their basic attributes. Combined with the boost from the town's magic array, these Tier 3 personal guards were far stronger than the town's Tier 3 NPC soldiers. One could even say that Silverwing Town's defenses were currently stronger than even that of main city-ranked NPC cities. After all, the NPC soldiers found inside main city-ranked NPC cities were mostly Tier 2 NPCs, only a small number were actually Tier 3 NPCs. The only advantage the NPC soldiers of NPC cities had over Zero Wing's personal guards was levels. Meanwhile, although the Faux Saint army had an overwhelming numerical advantage and even possessed more than 100,000 Grand Lords in its ranks, Silverwing Town's magic towers were extraordinary. Now that the Faux Saint monsters couldn't attack the town's defensive magic array effectively due to the interference of Zero Wing's personal guards, they were nothing more than live targets for the magic towers and various war weapons. However, while Silverwing Town's players were rejoicing over the strength Zero Wing had just displayed, the 3 heavily injured Faux Saint Devourers had consumed a few Faux Saint Destroyers and finally recovered their strength. They immediately leaped forward and regrouped with the other 5 Faux Saint Devourers. Good. They've finally recovered. Thousand Eyes grew ecstatic when he saw this scene. Previously, Faux had caught them completely off guard and sidelined 3 Faux Saint Devourers before the fight had even begun. As a result, the Faux Saint Devourers couldn't display their true strength. Now that all 8 Faux Saint Devourers had regrouped, they would finally be able to display their true strength. In the next moment, the 8 Faux Saint Devourers exchanged glances. After apparently coming to a tacit agreement, all 8 Devourers hurled their spears at the defensive barrier before them. The 8 spears then converged in mid-flight, their combined power so great that it crumbled the space around them and created a black hole, which transformed everything within a 50-yard radius into a field of nothingness. The power of this attack far exceeded that of the combination attack the 5 Faux Saint Devourers executed before. Tier 5? Illusory words felt stifled when she looked at the void field the black hole created. The phenomenon the Faux Saint Devourer's combination attack had created was known as void collapse, a phenomenon limited to Tier 5 attacks. Despite the debuff from Miniature World, the 8 Faux Saint Devourers had actually managed to execute an attack that reached the Tier 5 standard. An attack of such caliber could give even a main city-ranked defensive magic array a run for its money. An ordinary NPC city's defensive magic array would evaporate instantly when struck by this attack. Yet, despite knowing all of this, Illusory Words and Unyielding Soul could only watch as the Faux Saint Devourer's combination attack approached Silverwing Town's defensive magic array. After all, Tier 3 players or NPCs could not hope to stop such a powerful attack. The only thing they could do now was pray that Silverwing Town's defensive magic array could survive this attack. However, just when the black hole was about to reach the defensive magic array, a man clad in extravagant robes and holding a pitch-black, wooden staff suddenly appeared outside Silverwing Town. The man then casually extended a hand toward the approaching black hole. A gigantic, aquamarine, threefold magic array promptly formed before this man and stopped the black hole's advance cold. The man then flicked his extended hand upward, and the threefold magic array deflected the gigantic black hole into the distance. When the black hole touched the ground, it exploded and heavily injured all the Faux Saint monsters within a 50-yard radius. Moreover, these Faux Saint monsters also got trapped inside a void and couldn't escape from it. The attack got blocked. Everyone who saw this scene was stunned. Thousand Eyes, in particular, nearly had his eyes fall out of their sockets. This was a Tier 5 attack. Yet, it had been deflected so easily. However, before anyone could snap out of their daze, the robed man suddenly waved his wooden staff. Dozens of black lightning arcs lashed down from the sky, bombarding the 8 Faux Saint Devourers. As if a truck had hit them, all 8 Devourers got embedded into the ground. Their HP bars also lost a visible chunk, their life auras weakening considerably. Everyone was at a loss for words when they saw the 8 6-meter-deep craters that had suddenly formed on the battlefield. The strength that was just displayed could no longer be described as powerful. It practically challenged their worldview. Damn it! How is that Tier 4 NPC so powerful? Thousand Eyes scowled at the robed man hovering in midair. They had done their research on Craig Midlands, the Tier 4 NPC that protected Silverwing Town. This NPC's presence was the reason why Saint's Hand had not dared to approach Silverwing Town all this time. They had only done so after Faux had riled up the Faux Saint monsters into attacking en masse. However, Craig Midlands' strength was simply monstrous. The Magic King was basically casting Tier 4 curses instantly. To top it all off, he was even double casting Tier 4 curses without incantations. Commander, we can't go on like this. If we continue fighting, I'm afraid that Tier 4 NPC will soon kill all 8 Faux Saint Devourers. At that time, the guild leader will definitely fault us, the level 115, Tier 3 ranger standing beside Thousand Eyes advised hurriedly when he saw the Faux Saint Devourers becoming heavily injured. In front of the Magic King Craig Midlands, the 8 Faux Saint Devourers couldn't mount the slightest resistance. Their HPs were also rapidly decreasing. It was only a matter of time before their HPs hit 0. If not for Craig Midlands having his area of activity limited to Silverwing Town, he might even be able to annihilate the entire Faux Saint army single-handedly. Relay my command. Have all of the Faux Saint monsters retreat, Thousand Eyes said reluctantly when he saw the Faux Saint Devourers' HPs continuing to plummet and the Faux Saint army barely landing any attacks on Silverwing Town's defensive magic array. They had lost. Moreover, they had suffered 2 consecutive losses. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, understood. The Tier 3 Ranger nodded before hurriedly relaying Thousand Eyes' command to the other Saints' Hand members. Following which, Saints' Hands members took out a strange crystal from their bags and started chanting an incantation. Immediately afterward, the Faux Saint monsters attacking Silverwing Town fled to the surroundings as if they had just received a summons. Upon seeing the Faux Saint army retreating, Silverwing Town's players sighed in relief. Many players even cheered in celebration. After all, since the initial outbreak of the Faux Saint monsters, this was the first time players had achieved a massive victory against them. However, Faux, who remained standing above the town's main gate, did not show any excitement on his face. Instead, he shifted his gaze toward a distant forest. Leave? Do you really think Silverwing Town is a place where you can come and go as you wish? Faux said. He then took out a summon guard scroll from his bag and unfurled it. Since you've come here already, then just remain here forever. Chapter 2673, Frightening Tier 4. As Faux activated his summon guard scroll, the players nearby immediately felt the ambient mana density rise. They also felt the space around them stabilize, the mana fluctuations from outside the town no longer reaching them. Immediately afterward, a middle-aged man clad in luxurious robes and holding a gem-studded staff appeared before Faux. Although this middle-aged man did not have an imposing aura, when everyone checked his statistics, they were stupefied. Tier 4. Another Tier 4 NPC. Crap. Just how much strength does Zero Wing have hidden? When the various superpowers members saw Versailles, they cursed out loud. It might have been fine if they hadn't seen the strength of a Tier 4 NPC yet, but after Craig Midlands' performance, they understood just how frightening Tier 4 NPCs were. There was simply no comparison between them and Tier 3 NPCs. A Tier 4 NPC could truly single-handedly turn the tide of a large-scale war. Now, it was revealed that Zero Wing possessed two Tier 4 NPCs. Moreover, both were magical-class NPCs. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Faux had killed Thousand Eyes and his team without hesitation back then. If their guilds had two Tier 4 NPCs as well, they most likely wouldn't be afraid of the Faux Saint monsters either. After all, the gap between Tier 3 and Tier 4 was simply too massive, not one that numbers could make up for. Meanwhile, Feng's words enraged the Saints' Hand members hiding inside a forest several thousand yards away from Silverwing Town. What arrogance! That's right. It's just an additional Tier 4 NPC. Black Flame must be dreaming if he thinks he can kill all of us. Let him remain arrogant for now. Let's see how he continues remaining arrogant after the Faux Saint monsters grow and return after a while. They admitted that they were no match for Tier 4 NPCs. However, Faux had to be dreaming if he thought he could kill them all with just two Tier 4 NPCs, setting aside the several thousand yards separating them and Silverwing Town. Just the fact that the Faux Saint army stood between them meant Faux would take ages to reach them. Expecting to keep them here was simply a fool's dream. Silverwing Town's players shared the same opinion. They also thought that Faux was boasting. Even though the Faux Saint army couldn't bring down Silverwing Town, it still held the absolute initiative in this war. The Faux Saint army and Saints' Hands members could stay and leave whenever they wanted. Stopping them with just two Tier 4 NPCs was impossible. However, before Saints' Hands members could finish speaking, Versailles waved his staff. Suddenly, the space before him shattered and formed a space-time vortex. Following which, Faux and Versailles stepped into the space-time vortex and instantly arrived above the forest where Saints' Hands members were hiding, quietly overlooking these players, who were preparing to retreat. Teleportation? How is this possible? Saints' Hands members were shocked and they saw Faux and Versailles above them. Even this is possible? At this moment, aside from Saints' Hands members, the various superpowers members hidden in Silverwing Town were stunned, as well. A special energy enveloped the entire Orc Empire, preventing the use of all forms of teleportation. In fact, one couldn't even summon flying mounts in the Empire. Players could rely on only carriages and land mounts to travel around, which was common knowledge for players operating within the Empire. This was one of the reasons why Saints' Hands members were not afraid of getting killed. After all, even though Tier 4 NPCs could fly, it would still take them some time to cross a distance of several thousand yards. With the number of Saints' Hands members present being over 1,000, so long as they split up and fled in different directions, it would be impossible for Versailles and Craig Midlands to kill them all. Now, however, Faux and Versailles had teleported across a distance of several thousand yards. This was simply unbelievable. Evacuate. Everyone, split up and escape. Thousand Eyes yelled with an indescribably grim expression on his face, reacting immediately to Feng's arrival. Currently, the entire area around Silverwing town was under the soul annihilation curse. Any player that died within this sealed region would be subject to the curse. Naturally, Saints' Hands members were no exception. In order to ensure the conquest of Silverwing town, not only did Saints' Hands sacrifice 1,000 Tier 2, level 100 plus players and 100 Tier 3 experts, but it had also dispatched over 500 Tier 3 experts and over 1,000 Tier 2 experts capable of absorbing the strength of the Faux Saint Destroyers. If every one of these players got killed now, Saint's Hand would suffer unimaginable damage. As soon as Thousand Eyes finished shouting his orders, he took out a Tier 3 flight scroll from his bag. This was an item that granted players the ability to fly for a short time. The movement speed bonus provided was also much greater than that provided by a land mount. This scroll was one of his most important life-saving items. As for the other Saints' Hand members, they promptly snapped out of their daze after hearing Thousand Eyes' reminder and scattered in all directions, fleeing in a panic. If they died now, not only would their death penalties be doubled, but their souls would also be weakened for 15 days. Even Tier 3 experts could not afford such a penalty. After all, in the current God's domain, one would be eliminated from the front lines just for stagnating a few days, what more 15 days. You still think you can escape even now, oh? Faux scoffed, his expression remaining indifferent despite seeing Saints' Hands members fleeing in all directions. As soon as Faux finished speaking, a ripple of mana spread out from Versailles' body and instantly enveloped Saints' Hands members, restricting their movements. In the blink of an eye, all the Saints' Hand members found themselves immobilized. How is this possible? What is that NPC? Silverwing Town's players were stunned as they took in the scene displayed on the gigantic magic mirror hovering above the town. Craig Midlands' earlier performance had already been plenty astonishing. However, Versailles was actually outperforming him. Those were over 1,000 expert players. Moreover, many of them were even Tier 3 experts. Nevertheless, Versailles had rendered them immobile with just his mana domain. Is that really just a Tier 4 NPC? Illusory Words' mind reeled as she looked at Versailles. The fact that Craig Midlands could heavily injure 8 Faux Saint Devourers was already plenty amazing. Now, Versailles was even more terrific. Just by unleashing his mana domain, the NPC had subdued over 1,000 expert players and gained full control over their lives. How could this still be considered a fight? This was basically a one-sided massacre. What Illusory Words and the others did not know was that Versailles wasn't just an ordinary Tier 4 Great Wizard but a Tier 4 Great Wizard who had reached the world creation realm. He could create his own world within his mana domain. Unless one was at the Tier 4 standard, they wouldn't be able to resist his mana domain at all. In the next moment, Versailles swung his staff down at Saints' Hands members. Immediately afterward, a crimson magic array with a 200-yard radius appeared in midair. It attracted all the fire-type mana nearby, which coalesced into a fireball. As the fireball descended toward the ground, it continuously grew until it was the size of a mountain. Saints' Hands members and Silverwing Town's players all fell silent as they took in the fireball. For a time, it was as if time had frozen for everyone. Black flame. Just you wait. You cannot stop the Faux Saint army. It is only a matter of time before the Faux Saint army destroys Zero Wing. Seeing the descent of the gigantic fireball, Thousand Eyes turned to glare at Faux like a maniac. At the same time, he also kept ridiculing Faux for overestimating himself. The Faux Saint army will have to be able to grow first in order to do that. Faux retorted nonchalantly to Thousand Eyes' maniacal laughter. As soon as Faux said so, the gigantic fireball landed and exploded. Boom! Endless flames instantly spread across the forest, incinerating every one of Saint's Hand's members. Along with the deaths of Saint's Hand's members, the originally retreating Faux Saint army went berserk. With bloodshot eyes, every Faux Saint monster on the battlefield charged at Faux. Let's return, Faux said to Versailles. Nodding respectfully in response, Versailles opened another spacetime vortex and teleported back to Silverwing Town with Faux. Only after Faux arrived back at Silverwing Town's main gate did the players there snap out of their daze. Everyone then turned to stare at Faux in amazement. He got the job done, just like that? Looking at Feng's calm demeanor, it looked as if he had just taken a stroll through his backyard. Those were more than 1,000 expert players. However, Feng had simply trampled over them like they were a bunch of ants. With such strength in his grasp, even if the various superpowers Tier 3 experts banded together, they would be helpless to do anything against Zero Wing. Faux Saint Army? It was nothing but a joke. Meanwhile, after Feng returned to Silverwing Town, aside from the 8 heavily injured Faux Saint Devourers that were still desperately trying to escape, the other Faux Saint monsters resumed attacking Silverwing Town like crazy. However, by this time, everyone understood that Zero Wing would definitely annihilate the Faux Saint army in the end. After all, even if the Faux Saint Devourers could escape the Magic King, they wouldn't be able to escape Versailles. As for the other Faux Saint monsters, they were merely live targets for Silverwing Town's magic towers and Zero Wing's personal guards. Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon City, Fire Dragon Auction House. Currently, the upper echelons of nearly 20 superpowers had assembled inside the Fire Dragon Auction House. This was a gathering of unprecedented scale in the entire Fire Dragon Empire. At this moment, the Tier 3 experts of these superpowers had also surrounded the auction house, preventing unaffiliated players from entering the building. However, despite being barred entry, a huge crowd of players, including the upper echelons of first-rate guilds and top adventurer teams, still waited outside the building. Every one of these players was very concerned about the results of the alliance discussion this time. After all, this alliance discussion could very well change the power structure of the entire Eastern continent. If they did not pay attention to the results of this meeting, they might end up getting eliminated from God's domain without knowing the reason. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, inside the top floor meeting room of the Fire Dragon Auction House. Over 100 Tier 3 peak experts or above were currently seated at a round table. The combined aura these experts released would deter even domain realm experts from messing around. Currently, however, all of these experts were looking at the woman seated at the head of the table with respectful looks on their faces. White Feather, who stood behind the chairwoman, leaned forward and said quietly, "Vice Guild Leader, the various superpowers upper echelons are all here." In response, Cold Shadow nodded and said, "All right, let's begin." Chapter 2674. Relayed message. As soon as Cold Shadow indicated to start the meeting inside the large and spacious meeting room, White Feather stepped forward and swept her gaze across everyone present. Although White Feather did not say anything, everyone present promptly quieted down and focused their gazes on her, as they all understood that the alliance discussions were finally going to begin. Firstly, let me thank everyone on behalf of Mythology for attending the Faux Saint Alliance discussion. Although the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's invitees are unable to attend the meeting this time, due to special circumstances, the pavilion has sent a representative capable of making decisions for the guild. I believe it will not affect the implementation of the meeting results, so please rest assured, everyone, White Feather said from beside Cold Shadow. Upon hearing White Feather's words, the various superpowers upper echelons present reflexively shifted their gazes to the white-clad elderly man representing the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. At this point, the sudden disappearance of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Great Pavilion Master and 2 Pavilion Masters was already common knowledge among the superpowers. However, everyone had always thought that this was due to an internal dispute between the 2 Pavilion Masters and that they would definitely show up for today's meeting. Yet, to everyone's surprise, despite today's meeting being of utmost importance to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's continued existence, be it the Pavilion's Great Pavilion Master or the 2 Pavilion Masters, none of them had shown up. Only a few guild elders and 1 grand elder represented the pavilion at today's meeting. This situation inevitably piqued everyone's curiosity as to what had actually happened to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Since everyone is here, I won't waste words with you all. Let's address today's main topic, White Feather said as she swept her gaze across the people before her once more. She then clapped her hands twice. A holographic map of the entire eastern continent appeared in the center of the round table. Although many areas remained blacked out as unknown territory, the map included every location known by players at this stage of the game. In fact, it even displayed some level 120 to level 140 neutral maps, places that most of the superpowers attending this meeting lacked the ability to visit, in great detail. What a detailed map! For a time, the various representatives present gasped over the contents of the map. Detailed maps of specific parts of God's domain might not be rare in God's domain, but compiling all of them into one continental map was not an easy task. This was especially true for level 100+ neutral maps and forbidden lands. The various powers considered the information for these maps top secret and rarely shared it with others. Now, however, mythology had actually shared its valuable map information with the superpowers present without hesitation. This was an incredibly generous gesture. However, after everyone spent some time studying the map, they noticed a few surprising points. Certain locations on the map were marked in dull gray and white. These locations were none other than the territories of God's domain's various NPC dark forces and the recently appeared Faux Saint monsters. Mythology's intel on the territories of the Eastern Continent's NPC dark forces mostly matched up with what the other superpowers had, and these NPC dark forces were mainly based in level 100+ neutral maps. However, the Faux Saint monsters' territory marked on mythology's map made everyone present doubt their eyes. How did the Faux Saint monsters' territory grow so large? A grey-clad assassin wearing Shadowless Empire's guild emblem exclaimed. According to their information, the Faux Saint monsters' territory should encompass only the Purple Thorns Kingdom, Star Moon Kingdom, and the Orc Empire. However, according to mythology's map, the Faux Saint monsters were about to extend their reach into the 14 other neighboring kingdoms as well as the Black Dragon Empire and Dark Knight Empire already. This was incredible. Is this really the Faux Saint monsters' territory? Is there some kind of mistake? Besides Shadowless Empire's vice guild leader, the representatives of the super guilds Pride Empire, Sky Dragon House, Sacred Temple, and Nine Heavens Pavilion, as well as the representatives of the other superpowers, were stupefied by mythology's map. Although they had long known that the Faux Saint monsters were not easy opponents and would definitely pose a huge problem for the Eastern Continent, they hadn't anticipated that the monsters' development speed would be so swift. Everyone need not doubt the validity of this map. It is the result of exchanging information with multiple super guilds. Moreover, this information is just a day old, Cold Shadow said. I know many of you present find this hard to believe, but this is reality. This is also one of the reasons why I invited everyone present to today's meeting. The vice guild leaders of the 4 other super guilds present nodded, acknowledging that their respective guilds had indeed traded information with mythology. A day old? Doesn't that mean that the Faux Saint monsters' territory is even larger now? A level 116 female druid from the Moon God's Realm's Dark Pursuit asked. That's right. With their development speed, they should have come into contact with the borders of these kingdoms and empires already, Cold Shadow replied, nodding. I'm afraid it won't be long before their territory spreads to nearly half of the entire Eastern Continent. At that time, everyone present will not be able to avoid coming into contact with Faux Saint monsters. The representatives that remained relatively relaxed before could not help growing nervous at Cold Shadow's words. Originally, they had come to this meeting merely to see if there were any benefits to be had. After all, they all believed that this meeting targeted Zero Wing. In their opinions, the matter of forming an alliance to resist the Faux Saint monsters was just an excuse. Vice Guild Leader Shadow, since you've gathered us here, does that mean you have a plan to prevent this situation from occurring? The white-clad elder from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion asked with a grim expression. The sudden disappearance of the Great Pavilion Master and the two Pavilion Masters had already dealt a significant blow to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Now, there was also the threat of the Faux Saint monsters. This development was simply a nightmare for the pavilion. He had seen how the Faux Saint monsters destroyed Star Moon Kingdom's border cities. Although the Black Dragon Empire was strong, the Faux Saint monsters were growing stronger by the day. After they gobbled up Star Moon Kingdom, it was only a matter of time before they did the same to the Black Dragon Empire. Upon hearing the white-clad elder's words, the other representatives present promptly turned to Cold Shadow. They all wished to know the reason why Cold Shadow had gathered them today. Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invited everyone to come, Cold Shadow replied, nodding. Her lips curling up, she continued, I believe everyone already knows by now how powerful the Faux Saint monsters are. It is simply impossible for us to stop these monsters from spreading their influence. Hence, before today's meeting, I formed a partnership with Saint's Hand's guild leader. A partnership? Everyone perked up their ears at Cold Shadow's words. The guild known as Saint's Hand was not foreign to those present. They also knew very clearly that Saint's Hand possessed tools that prevented the Faux Saint monsters from attacking players. In fact, the guild even had a tool that could surely prevent the Faux Saint monsters from attacking guild towns and cities. However, until this day, Saint's Hand had never shown any willingness to partner with other powers. The most it was willing to do was sell some of these tools at exorbitant prices. The conditions of the partnership are very simple. All we need to do is collaborate to take down Stone Forest City. At that time, not only will Saint's Hand sell us a stronghold barrier that can prevent the Faux Saint monsters from attacking the towns and cities the barrier is set up in, but everyone present will also get some of Stone Forest City's shares as well as a number of residential slots in the Freedom Hotel, Cold Shadow said, smiling. When Cold Shadow finished speaking, the eyes of the various representatives present glistened. Even if Cold Shadow had not mentioned partnering to take down Stone Forest City, they already had plans to do so. After all, Stone Forest City was simply too amazing. What made Stone Forest City amazing wasn't its location in a level 100 neutral map but the city's Freedom Hotel. After experiencing the Freedom Hotel's effects, practically every expert belonging to the various superpowers wished to have their own room there. That way, they would be able to not only accumulate the double EXP buff rapidly but also expel much more quickly the foreign energies corroding their bodies. Having a room of their own would drastically increase their leveling speed. Moreover, depending on the quality of the room one rented in the Freedom Hotel, one could even train in the Freedom Hotel's excellent environment and achieve extraordinary results. At this point, the main reason why Stone Forest City was able to continue flourishing in Zero Wing's hands was the Freedom Hotel. Otherwise, the city would have long since fallen due to Starlink and the various superpowers' constant harassment. If they could secure Stone Forest City for themselves, not only would they have a better assurance against the Faux Saint monsters, but they would even gain residential slots in the Freedom Hotel. This was definitely killing two birds with one stone. However, taking Stone Forest City down won't be easy. Aside from the NPC Night Division, quite a few superpowers have partnered with Zero Wing. Even with an alliance, I'm afraid capturing the city will be difficult. That's right. The flying ships are also constantly patrolling around Stone Forest City. If it really comes down to a fight, I'm afraid the number of Tier 3 experts we have is far from enough to capture the city. The Dark World's failed invasion has thoroughly proven this point. Moreover, I heard that Black Flame has already returned. His personal strength is extraordinary. Although many of the representatives present showed interest in Cold Shadow's plan, some representatives also shook their heads and expressed their worries. The fact that the various superpowers desired Stone Forest City was old news. However, it was precisely because they were incapable of dealing with Zero Wing's NPC Night Division that they had chosen to whittle down Zero Wing's economy in secret instead of taking direct action. Although Cold Shadow had brought this matter out into the open, the crux of the problem remained unchanged. Black Flame's return is indeed a problem, but he already has problems protecting himself. I believe you all should know about this. Moreover, aside from us, the Dark World's various powers will take action as well. After all, their hatred for Zero Wing has never subsided. They merely lack the opportunity to take action. When the time comes, the Dark World side will attack the teleportation gate in full force to lure Zero Wing's Night Division away, while our side will attack Stone Forest City. Even if the Night Division is powerful, it can't defend two locations simultaneously, Cold Shadow said. Moreover, Saint's Hand will take part in the attack. It will even bring some Faux Saint monsters to help. Those NPC knights might be powerful when going up against players, but their performance will drop when going up against the Faux Saint monsters. At Cold Shadow's mention of the Faux Saint monsters, the various representatives present sucked in a deep breath. By this time, the strength of the Faux Saint monsters had already been deeply ingrained into their hearts. These monsters simply weren't opponents players could handle. If an army of them attacked, even NPC cities would fall, let alone a measly guild city. Moreover, according to the intel they obtained, mythic-ranked Faux Saint Devourers had already appeared in the ranks of Faux Saint monsters. Once these Faux Saint Devourers reached a certain number, even main city-ranked NPC cities were likely to fall. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Right then, however, the various representatives present suddenly received message notifications, one after another, the synchrony of these messages making their arrival seem pre-planned. Following which, the originally excited venue suddenly fell deathly silent. Feather, what happened? When Cold Shadow saw everyone sinking into a daze, she automatically turned to White Feather for the reason for everyone's reactions. Just what kind of information did everyone receive that stunned them so much? They lost. The Faux Saint Army and Saint's Hand's forces that went to attack Silverwing Town lost. White Feather exclaimed, her eyes filled with shock and horror as she looked at Cold Shadow. Moreover, it was a tragic defeat. Every Faux Saint monster and Saint's Hand member that went to Silverwing Town died. Chapter 2675, Change in Times on the Eastern Continent. After White Feather finished speaking, the heavy atmosphere inside the meeting room grew even heavier. For a moment, it felt as if time inside the room had stopped as the room became indescribably silent. They lost? Moreover, all of them got killed? How is that possible? After snapping out of her shock, Cold Shadow felt that White Feather was kidding her. Either that, or there was a mistake in the information reported. The Faux Saint Army and Saint's Hand's failure to destroy Silverwing Town was already plenty unbelievable. Now, however, she was actually being told that not only did the Faux Saint Army and Saint's Hand suffer defeat, but Zero Wing had even annihilated them. She would rather believe that Zero Wing had instantly destroyed a superpower than this nonsense. After all, over 4 million Faux Saint monsters had marched on Silverwing Town. Moreover, the weakest monsters in the army were Great Lord-ranked Faux Saint saboteurs. Even a 6-man party led by a Tier 3 expert would need around 10 minutes just to kill one of them. Even if every Faux Saint monster stood still and allowed Silverwing Town's players to wail away at them, it would take ages for the players to annihilate the Faux Saint monsters. Meanwhile, it had been, at most, 2 hours since the Faux Saint army launched its attack on Silverwing Town. How could Zero Wing possibly annihilate the army in such a short time? Besides, the Grand Lord-ranked Faux Saint destroyers were monsters that would flee from battle once their high HP fell to a certain level. With more than 100,000 Faux Saint destroyers fleeing in multiple directions, the players in Silverwing Town couldn't hunt down every one of them, even if the number of players was multiplied tenfold. Nevertheless, White Feather and the various representatives present all revealed a bitter smile filled with self-ridicule upon hearing Cold Shadow's question. They truly wished that the information their subordinates had just relayed to them was false. However, the report they received contained not just words, but numerous images and videos as well. In fact, the report was so detailed that they could not help but wonder if they were dreaming. Normally, even when relaying urgent information, their subordinates would send them only a few paragraphs of text. Now, however, their subordinates were behaving like diligent, hot-blooded youths. Just the videos they included in the report numbered over a dozen. There were even narrative texts accompanying each video, as if their subordinates were afraid that they would not understand the events recorded. In response to Cold Shadow's question, White Feather did not bother wasting words on an explanation. Instead, she forwarded the report her subordinate sent her to Cold Shadow. When Cold Shadow finished looking through White Feather's report, her entire person fell into a daze, her reaction not much better than White Feather's and the others. An impenetrable defensive magic array. Over 300 personal guards capable of overwhelming the Faux Saint monsters. A Tier 4 NPC guard capable of heavily injuring 8 Faux Saint Devourers in a single hit. A Tier 4 personal guard capable of immobilizing and vaporizing over 1,000 expert players with just a thought. Each piece of information was practically more exaggerated and unbelievable than the one before. If not for Cold Shadow being certain that Saint's hand aimed to annihilate Zero Wing and knowing that the Faux Saint army marching to Silverwing town was real, she would have thought that Saint's hand had joined hands with Zero Wing to toy with her. Meanwhile, aside from the superpowers attending the alliance discussion, the various powers all over the eastern continent were also in an uproar. So, this is Zero Wing's true strength? Amazing. It's no wonder Black Flame thought nothing of Thousand Eyes' threat and even killed him directly. With such strength, who could possibly take down Silverwing town? A Tier 4 personal guard? It seems times are going to change on the eastern continent. The various powers of God's domain had never thought that the Faux Saint army would fail to destroy Silverwing town, much less suffer such an overwhelming defeat. However, rather than the Faux Saint army's defeat, what truly shocked the various powers was the strength of Tier 4 NPCs, or rather their gross misjudgment of the strength of Tier 4 NPCs, previously. Although they were in awe of Tier 4 NPCs, it was only at the level of the awe they felt for mythic monsters. Nowadays, however, the number of Tier 3 experts in God's domain was on a constant uptick. The number of Tier 3 skills and spells Tier 3 experts learned had also increased substantially. Tier 3 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies were also appearing one after another. Hence, expert players that possessed combat power approaching the Tier 4 standard were no longer as rare as before. In fact, killing level 100+ mythic monsters had already become a normal occurrence for players in the current God's domain. Hence, no one felt much awe toward Tier 4 NPCs anymore. They all thought that Tier 4 NPCs were no longer anything special. At most, they were just slightly stronger than mythic monsters and could play a relatively significant role only in small-scale battles, and not affect the big picture at all. However, after watching Craig Midlands's and Versailles' performances, the various powers realized that they had been sorely mistaken. Let alone being capable of affecting the big picture of God's domain, everything below Tier 4 was basically an ant before Tier 4 NPCs. The number of Tier 3 players or monsters that Tier 4 NPCs had to face did not matter. They could easily annihilate their opponents with a single wave of their hands. Previously, many of the Eastern Continent's superpowers had felt gleeful over the fact that they had surpassed Zero Wing in the number of Tier 3 experts they possessed. In fact, their number of Tier 3 experts had grown so large that even Tier 3 personal guards would not be capable of stopping them. This was also why many superpowers had started having designs on Zero Wing's Stone Forest City. However, after Craig Midlands's and Versailles' performances, these superpowers realized that their thoughts were laughable. Zero Wing's main force had disappeared. Zero Wing was no longer as strong as before. Zero Wing was merely relying on its past prestige to survive. It was only a matter of time before the various superpowers devoured Zero Wing completely. What a bunch of nonsense. Every one of these assumptions was outrageously mistaken. Meanwhile, inside the Dark World, a commotion was also sweeping through the entire Otherworld due to the Faux Saint army's defeat. Amazing. After this blow, the powers that are secretly taking action in the dark world will have to think twice. Blue Rainbow balled her fists in excitement when she got to the end of her subordinate's report. Previously, although Dark Rhapsody had managed to develop rapidly due to its partnership with Zero Wing, the pressure the Dark World's various powers placed on Dark Rhapsody had also risen steadily. As a result, safeguarding the Dark World's teleportation gate became increasingly difficult. To make matters worse, World Domination had also pulled off a huge comeback, using some unknown method to raise the levels and strength of its guild members rapidly. It had also secretly allied with many of the Dark World's powers and incessantly ambushed Dark Rhapsody's members, inflicting significant losses on Dark Rhapsody. As a result, not only did Dark Rhapsody's influence in the Dark World not increase, but it was even decreasing with each passing day. Recently, the various rumors of Zero Wing's eventual downfall had even swayed the opinions of part of Dark Rhapsody's upper echelon, which, in turn, shattered the guild's unity. Those senior members all thought that Dark Rhapsody would only be doomed if it continued partnering with Zero Wing and had suggested that the guild partner with World Domination instead. However, with the appearance of a Tier 4 personal guard in Zero Wing, who would dare continue opposing Dark Rhapsody's partnership with Zero Wing? Meanwhile, during the time Zero Wing's various partners were rejoicing, the war at Silverwing Town had also entered its final phase. With the Faux Saint army annihilated, thousands of Zero Wing members were currently helping the various independent players tally their contribution in the war with excited expressions on their faces. Although the Faux Saint monsters did not drop any loot, they granted a lot of EXP, easily 3 or 4 times more than ordinary monsters of the same rank and level. This was also one of the reasons why many players still chose to operate in the Faux Saint monsters' territory instead of heading for safer locations. Operating within the Faux Saint monsters' territory might be very dangerous, but with how much EXP these monsters granted, so long as one did not die, one's leveling speed would be at least 2 times faster than if one grinded elsewhere. After Silverwing Town successfully annihilated the Faux Saint army without sustaining any casualties, the EXP everyone got was through the roof. The Zero Wing members that had participated in this war had leveled up once on average, with the lower-leveled members even gaining 2 levels through this war. Their leveling speed was simply unprecedented. At the same time, Silverwing Town's victory induced the players and adventurer teams operating in the other guild towns established within the Orc Empire to make their way to Silverwing Town, all wishing to develop there. In fact, there were many Tier 3 experts seeking to join Zero Wing as well. This situation overjoyed Yulan and Melancholic Smile. Currently, what Zero Wing lacked the most were Tier 3 experts. Due to Zero Wing's main force members' absence and the fact that most level 100+ dungeons had a Tier 3 requirement for entry, Zero Wing had a very difficult time obtaining the rare materials available only in level 100+ dungeons. The guild could only purchase and trade for these materials. However, the various powers all considered these materials strategic resources and rarely ever chose to sell them. This, in turn, limited Zero Wing's production of level 100+ weapons and equipment. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, as Silverwing Town's players were celebrating their victory, Faux made his way back to Zero Wing's residence. He planned to log out of the game and get some rest. Previously, because he had killed another 8 Faux Saint Devourers, he had gained another 8 soul marks. Although none of these soul marks contained a soul array like before, they had refreshed his brain and triggered extraordinary activity. This definitely wasn't normal for him, as he had been online for over 10 days already. He needed to log off to rest and inspect his body. While waiting for the 30-second logout process to complete, Faux suddenly received a call request from Yulan. Guild leader, Mythology's Fong Shihan suddenly visited the main headquarters. Our people couldn't stop her and her entourage from entering the building at all. They're currently in the main lobby, and she says she wants to have a discussion with you. She says it is related to Zero Wing's future. Do you wish to meet her? Yulan asked anxiously. Looking for me? Faux was a little surprised by Yulan's words. Smiling, he continued, this is interesting. Have someone lead them to the top floor reception room. I'll head over immediately. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.